Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show. Welcome back for another Thursday night paint and chill stream. As you can see, I am working with some Bombay India ink. I haven't used this stuff in a while, so the bottle was a little clogged. Waiting for the usual guys to come on in and maybe paint something up this time. I am still working on the same minis I've been working on for about a month. Made a little progress, knocked a couple out. Then I will get back to work on my Gray Knight Terminator models. But since it requires a lot of cutting and clipping and filing, I didn't want to do that on camera. Looking at the instruction sheet, etc. Let's see who we got in the chat tonight. Let's get rid of that. The dog is barking up a storm because he's a knucklehead. Hey, what's up, squirrel? You know where the link is. You want to come in and join and chat and paint. Just trying to knock these out. I missed Fritz's challenge. I got busy with some stuff and didn't actually get to paint toward the end of the last month. So I kind of dropped the ball on that one, but I'll be ready. My goal is to have about, what did I say, like 250 models done by next year, and I'm about 10% in there, so not bad, not bad. Working on a Styx spirit of some sort, trying to do a little fire at the bottom, but it's not coming out the way I hoped. So I'm gonna try brightening it up a little with this Bombay India orange ink. I really like working with inks. They're just so much more vibrant, and I like my paints to be either really, really pasty for dry brushing or really, really watery for like everything else. Of course, I love the speed paints, but orange is one of those colors that nobody seems to be able to get right. I'm hoping that the new orange wash, the quick shade wash for army painters, the new Fanatic line is better than some of the other colors of orange they've put out, especially in the speed paint line. The Zealot Yellow is the closest I can get to some of the oranges that I want, but it's kind of a hot mess. If you haven't worked with it, just be warned, it's not the greatest of colors to play around with. Yeah. This stuff is kind of what I want. Let's see. Working away from home, no painting until after Gary Con. Yeah, I really thought about it, but then I saw, thanks to Mac, how they treated everybody but the elite customers, uh, the silver guys, the silver badge, if you will. Just they got hosed, and I think it's Gary Con. I could be thinking of something else, but yeah, I just can't do that. Not when I'm looking at hosting my own convention next year. If everything works out right with Emperor's Choice and my finances and being able to get there and organize it all. I'd really like to go to Claricon. There's a lot of people that I respect that are going to be there. Of course, Father Aaron, one of the best out there. And if he's holding another convention, got to do it at least once, right, Squirrel? It'd be cool to meet you up there too, man. Might be easier for you to get there than me. It's a long, long way away, distance wise. And as you guys know, I don't like to fly. So, who do we got here popping in? Crafty Gamer, what's happening?
My headphone microphone died, so if I sound like crap,
Yeah, you don't sound that bad. Yeah, I heard maybe it wasn't Gary Kahn, but there was nothing left for the silver badges to actually partake in, and you had to look, you had to hit the game to find out what it was before you signed up, or just signed up for a game and hope you picked the right one. That tell me what game I'm signing up for. Don't waste my time and with the first come first serve and all that sort of stuff. That just sounds like dirty pool to me. You done any conventions crafting?
no.
Plan on it?
Someday, maybe.
Yeah, I've got the birth certificate, but for that, and I don't think it would be a problem. Just mind my p's and q's, be nice and polite, and get in, get out. What's up, George? You also know where the link is. I wonder where Justin is. I hope he's not having a relapse from the other day. Let's go take a look. Maybe he said something. Or maybe he's just sleeping. Oh, there he is. Nope, nope, he's not making it. Something, having some physical issues, so just, whoop, what the hell? Just be you and me for a while. Is that what we were talking about? Mac was Claricon? I don't remember if that's the one we were talking about. So what are you working on?
Uh,
Craft-
the dog of a halfling rider.
Okay.
Frog.
You got anything you can show us?
Uh, the rider.
I'm sure folks out there would love to see what you're working on. Welcome to the show, George.
Hey,
Wrong button.
How's it going?
let's see here.
You ready for Saturday?
Oh yeah, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, you asked some questions about the lab ship and stuff. Uh, yeah, wherever you
Okay.
think it's necessary. I give some ideas, but I don't want to like. Oh, wait, oh, I got.
Oh,
Sorry.
Let me blow
Okay.
up crafting real quick here.
yeah, if I can get to focus.
Here we go.
No,
Oh, cool.
it's still out of focus.
Wait, no. Is that a bow?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a halfling archer if I can get it to focus.
Excuse me, folks. I've been
Do
sneezing
I
all
have
day.
autofocus on?
Yeah, the further away you get it, the better it looks.
That's with our old eyes generally.
right?
All right, let's try this one more time.
I have the weird fortune or misfortune that I'm nearsighted, so I usually look at something close. I just take my glasses off and I can see
Yeah, that doesn't
splinters
help
and
any. It just wants to look at my
kids.
floor.
Yeah, yeah. You can always try getting like an index card or something white and put it behind it.
That's a good point.
That sometimes helps. A nice silhouette there, but no, that's not doing it.
Nope. His camera has always been a pain in the ass.
No worries. Just thought get to see some of your handiwork. Here's the one. Okay, I don't think that's the same thing. I'm also working on some dark elf models from Reaper Miniatures. You got about what 2, 4, 6, 8 of them, and then I'm probably gonna take a little bit of a break from painting in March because I have some other things I have to take care of. But then I'll be back at it April. So you're saying about your lab ship, George?
Oh yeah, whatever you need to for your if you have any ideas with the story, you want to kind of adjust some of the thoughts I've had on it. But whatever you like, I'm cool with. Like if you want to put it at the edge of the universe, we'll put it there.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I was. I've got a couple. I hope will be neat ideas for that.
Yeah. Um,
It won't be for a couple more episodes,
hmm,
but as you know, you're all you guys are heading toward uh, Mars in the
yeah.
game. I'll message you in Shadows Discord tomorrow with an update pick and my game schedule. We got to get a beer at least. Yeah, no doubt. I wish I could go, but it was just. I like to know what I'm paying for, and with a convention like that, I would be so tempted to just spend way too much money on merchandise in the sellers area as opposed to actually ended up playing any games, and then I'd have to worry about shipping the stuff home, which is what most of my friends do. They bring a wagon or something like that, and then they just buy a crap ton of stuff and find the nearest post office or mailboxes center and just mail it all home as opposed to trying to bring it on the airplane with them.
Let's see. I'll do it like that.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm looking forward to this weekend. Got at least 2 games for sure. Gonna be running.
So I've been watching. What do you call that show? Cowboy Bebop. It's kind
Good
of
for
a
you. That's a good one.
preparation for the ideas. I
Yeah,
got to
that's
an episode where they had a little bit of lore in it, so it was kind of cool. I don't know, about like maybe 8 episodes in, and kind of learn about what happened to the Earth and stuff.
another one of my favorites is Trigun, but like Cowboy Bebop, whenever they do that chibi shit, I just want to. It just like ruins it for me. At least for a couple of minutes. I don't know why they insist on doing that shit. I know that's like their idea or their way to let you know that it's funny in case you don't have closed captions or what have you. But it's like if you have to tell me it's funny,
Hmm.
it's not.
Yeah, I've been watching it on Hulu, so it's like dubbed. So I'm probably not
Okay,
getting the exact feel of the original. The
as close as you're going to get without reading. And I know a lot of
Yeah,
people out there don't like subtitles. I can
I
take them
don't
or leave
mind
them.
them. I just gotten now. It's at least TV time. It's like at the end of the night, and it's sort of
Just want to
whatever.
chill.
Yeah.
Try doing subtitles when you have my reading disability.
Oh yeah.
Every single
Like,
set
well,
of
this.
words has to be paused.
Yeah. Yeah. I
It's going
yeah,
to be
but
rough.
I'd probably have to do that. So yeah, like have like dyslexia or something, or
Sort of. It is technically dyslexia, but it's not the common one. It's not where letters float around or anything like that.
mm,
Two big ones is technically one's not dyslexia. I just have a I forgot what's called, but it's a problem with understanding letters. But for me, when it comes
mm,
to the dyslexic part, is I will expect a sentence to be structured a certain way, and when it's not, I get confused.
okay. Mm.
Sounds rough.
I'm just so easily distracted. I just make up what the sentence says. Like that didn't say that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say that now.
For me, it's more of a depending on how much time goes by, I'll just make up a whole new story in my head.
My wife would she does fashion design, and she would see something like in a movie or something, and then go back home and redraw it from her memory, and then look at it
Really?
again and say, I didn't remember it that way, but I like what I just did better. Like I remembered it wrong, but I like the wrong memory better.
Hey, that's actually a bonus. If she's designing, then she can't get. Sorry about that, guys. Nothing I can do about that. That's the raceway that I live near.
Hmm.
That's just a regular street on a regular day. And with the rain coming down like it is, that guy's going to end up in a wreck.
Yeah,
Just being stupid. I don't understand that whole.
that's one of the things you got to get used to. Like in a dry climate, when it rains, it gets so slippery.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like back in Jersey, you get you know, maybe in the first few minutes of a rain, you'll get this issue, but by the first few minutes of after about 10 minutes of a rain, it's like the oils have washed off the road, so you kind of on not too slippery of a road. But here you don't really get much more than a 10 minutes drizzle or something like that here and there, and you're just it brings the oils out of the roads or something. I guess that's what my college professor explained it to me.
What's really fun is when you have the day before, nice, warm enough for rain, is how I should put that, and then the following 3 days is ice cold.
Yeah. Well, black ice is the worst. I remember in college, my dad had a thick Greek accent, and I used to go to school in Newark, which was like a really nasty black neighborhood. Well, not that not was not nasty because it was black. It was just a nasty neighborhood where people lived, and he goes, "Watch out for the black guys." I'm like, "Yeah, I'd be going there for a couple of years, and not to really tell me that, and kind of uncomfortable hearing me say that." And then I stepped into the street and almost slipped on the black ice, which was what he was telling me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I used to pronounce sheetrock shitrock. That was cool. The funny thing was he used to pronounce. Ever see the South Park Jersey Shore episode where they kept saying "gabbage"? You gabbage. You a bunch of gabbage. He would. He had that weird way of saying garbage, like gabbage, like he would go, which wasn't a Greek thing. It was, I think, something he picked up while
My
living there.
cabbages.
The
You
one I
gabbage.
hear the most lately that cracks me up. A couple of people, a couple of YouTubers say monsters as monsters, and if you know,
Monsters.
you know. Yeah, that always cracks me up.
Bottom, boom, bottom, boom, bottom, boom, 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 boom.
Yep. I was more of a Adams Family fan. Was
Yeah,
it Yvonne DiCarlo? Just did nothing for me. She just looked old. But
I liked the hot
Morticia,
rod when I was a kid. I remember.
yeah, I think I had that model as a kid, like the Rat Fink models. Remember those?
Yeah.
That whole car culture. I was actually really into that when I was a little kid, and then never, you know, never entered, never ended up getting a driver's license, which is funny. You remember the old snake and mongoose rivalry with the funny cars?
No, no.
There were two cars. One was the snake, one was the mongoose, and out here in California, they were always, going up against each other at the speedways.
Oh, cool.
We had these little drag strips. It was like a local. It wasn't small, but it wasn't like really big either.
Yeah.
But that was like, oh god, I must have been. I was definitely younger than 10 when that was a thing. I had like T-shirts and posters and stuff. I don't,
Yeah.
what my parents were thinking. I was just a little kid, and they hated going because being in wheelchairs, no matter where they were, they couldn't see over people's heads,
Mm.
and you know, it was loud as shit.
Yeah. They had one in Englishtown in Jersey. I never went to it. My cousin used to go once in a while, and yeah, I think he was deaf for a couple days afterwards. Worse
Yep,
than going to a metal concert.
that's the way I am when I go shooting. Uh, every time I've ever gone shooting, I did not use hearing protection, and I was also in a lot of metal bands, and there's
Mm.
no protection from that. Uh, so my hearing should
So
be
how
worse
bad is
than
the
it is.
ringing in your ears?
It's really none. It's not that
Actually,
bad.
I'm not surprised. There is a difference between being in a rock band, that type of sound, and operating something like a chainsaw. Being in a rock band
So,
actually usually dulls your hearing.
yeah.
Something like a chainsaw usually gives you tinnitus, which I'd researched that because I ended up with tinnitus and trying to figure out why my dad is half deaf. Well, I got tinnitus. Then I researched like, oh,
Oh,
okay, that explains
Yeah,
it.
I use my chainsaw pretty regularly, but I don't
Yeah,
have.
but the music came before the chainsaw, so actually you're partially immune to the chainsaw now.
Yeah,
well,
cool.
that's cool. The
Yeah, after your hearing gets damaged by something like rock music and it's been lowered, something high pitched like a chainsaw is not likely to give you tinnitus.
Cool, because that would drive me nuts. Having
Trust me, it's very
yeah,
annoying. Uh, there is a reason why most people with tinnitus surround themselves with ambient noise.
yeah.
I
I
can
had a
imagine
friend.
that.
He'd always have a fan on or something.
Oh, don't even start me. My fan, uh, I normally have a fan right across from where I sit, and my dog's taken to sitting in the chair that's right across from me for whoever's operating the camera, and here he comes. Um, and the other day, he was in the chair and he jumped out abruptly, and I don't know what it did, but the fan was plugged in, and it like kind of pulled it out, but didn't quite. And I think it just must have shorted it or something. So now my fan doesn't work, which I'm going to need in a couple of weeks, if not sooner. I really like having the fan on me when I'm doing these shows. It helps my paint dry faster.
Yeah. My ear trumpet was struck by lightning. I might have said that. Tendinitis. I don't know.
Yeah, and trust me, you don't want to be struck by lightning.
No, you don't.
No,
I,
I
I don't remember. In fact, it's not my story. It's my mother's story. I
yeah,
I do not remember being struck by lightning, but my mother will claim to this day I was.
yeah. I got struck out in Virginia working on a gun range for the military. We were building it, and uh, it started raining, and the boss had to take some other workers to another place, another site, and left me there, and forgot to come pick me up. And I was just working away, didn't realize. Then I heard the crack. Then I woke up on my ass with a hole in my arm. and I had to stay the night there because nobody came to pick me up. He probably drove by and uh, didn't see me because I was laid out. God knows how long. No food, freaking
To the
soaking
hospital.
wet. Yeah, there was a first aid kit, so I bandaged myself up and waited till morning, freezing my ass off. The boss was like, dude, you want to go to the hospital? No, but I do want to get into some dry fucking clothes. There was a space heater in the one of those portable offices we had, uh, but that was just not enough. Drinking water out of the hose. Remember when you could do that and not die?
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy things we did. Play with firecrackers, like thermite sparklers or whatever that was.
Yeah, I still actually keep some sparklers and some welding rods because you need something like that to ignite something like that. You can't just take a big lighter and think that's going to work.
What's his name? That Styro Pyro guy did some videos on some fireworks left from by his grandpa from like the 40s.
Oh,
There was
really?
one thing that you would like throw and it would just explode or something, like some kind of
Like from
impact
the impact,
explosive. Yeah, like
like those cat bombs.
yeah,
Remember
but
those?
like more like the equivalent of a cherry bomb, but you threw it and it exploded on impact.
I miss fireworks from my childhood, let alone
Any
that
good?
old. Oh, well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm 34 this year, and back when I was a kid, we had fireworks that could literally set trees on fire if you weren't careful.
Oh,
And
sure.
Yeah.
and not just like, oh, if you set them in the wrong spot. No, you nailed them to a tree or a pole, and then they just span there in a circle. So you
Oh,
better
yeah.
have your hose ready.
Yeah. Pinwheels. Oh, I love those things. Yeah, I always, whenever, even when I buy like safe and sane fireworks, for the Fourth of July out here, I
Mhm.
always buy certain things, and I always make sure I have extras just in case. One of my favorites. You may think they're no big deal, but ground bloom flowers. You know those things,
Mhm.
little pink tubes that spin around, like
I haven't
crazy.
seen those in forever.
Well, believe it or not, those things work underwater.
Nice.
Mm.
And what we would do is we'd go out to Huntington Pier and we'd light one and then take a wrist rocket and launch it up into the sky, right? And then it would come back down in the water and it would still, you could see this glow, it'd go blue, orange, red, whatever the colors
Nice.
were. And you could see it underwater because what happens is they spin so fast, they actually create a pocket of air that allows them to work.
Or the whatever they use could be self-oxidizing, in which case it'll still burn underwater.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
not a similar story, but I have a story about something similar. We got literally a crate, like a shipping crate of little. I think they were called yellow jackets. They
okay.
were they were something similar, but they were definitely smaller, and they just flew straight up in the air. They had a little bee cardboard bee on them, and they were actually really fun. But my father went to light off like it's like the 15th one in a row. We're having fun,
Yeah.
but that thing shot straight at my face, and this is probably the only time I've ever done it, and probably the only time I've ever done it. I superhuman dodged off to the side to keep getting slammed in the face by that damn thing. It's almost like I anticipated it coming from my face.
Crazy, man.
But I'm
Yeah.
willing to bet if that
Matrix.
if that happened again, I wouldn't have been able to dodge. I'm pretty confident I've been hit in the face.
I had something like that happen to me once. My parents' car was overheating, and they couldn't get out of the car very easily. And they had already taught me. I was little. I mean, again, under 10 years old, and they taught me how to do the radiator cap just for such an emergency. Get a rag. Blah blah blah. Do the thing, flip it, blah, and turn it. And I did. And That thing freaking geysered out like nobody's business, and I like I like blinked like a blink dog, man. I was freaking 50 yards away. Um, as soon as it started geysering, I don't even remember running or moving my feet or anything. I just knew that I was over there, and it was still like pumping out all the water.
Oh
It
yeah.
was like
I,
crazy scary.
well,
My
there's
mom,
a
of course, she's freaking out. Why
yeah.
do you have him do that? Blah, 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 blah. Like, because he just didn't want to get out of the car and do it. He taught me how to do it. Shut up, woman.
Uh, I have two stories related to that. One is actually my sister. Forgot exactly what it was, but we were watching something happen, and then an explosion happened, and my sister was where she was, and then behind my mother in less than a second. I don't even know how that happened. And then it's related. It's not directly like what happened there. I was it, it more like it reminded me of the story. When I was in my school as a teenager, I was called the Fat Ninja because one day, now mind you, this was I walked up a set of stairs. Now, mind you, these stairs are movie sound effect editor's dream. They just make up teen million sounds as you walk up and down them.
Gotcha. They didn't call you Beverly Hills Ninja?
No, they call me the Fat Ninja. But I will say to this day, I walked up those stairs normally. I can still hear the conversation happening on the ground. So I make a comment to the conversation when I'm at the top, and everyone that was there that day swears I Naruto ninja walked up the wall. It's the only way no one would have heard me.
Could have been shoes.
Yeah.
Oh, I swear
Uh,
that thing was making noise as I was walking up. No one was paying attention.
Yeah, that's probably what it was. They're probably all high.
And then my that particular reputation started getting reinforced when I could walk up on people without them noticing. There's actually a good reason for that though. My mother, when I was walking through the house as a kid, kept yelling, "Don't stop through the house!" I'm not stopping. Yes, you are. So I ended up becoming a very light-footed person.
you need those ninja-proof floors with little squeaky nails underneath.
Yeah. My second story up here is has got certain parts of the floor I can tell now I can anyways.
Well, the
Where
dead bodies are hiding.
well no where when my wife or when Jackie is moving about, it's like, oh, I know where he is. All right.
Yeah. Oh, there was a buddy of mine. I didn't attune myself to his house like he did, but he could tell you who was going through his house just by the type of squeaking it would happen.
Yeah.
Mind you, he couldn't tell you apart if you were the same weight, but he was accurate within what I think 5 pounds. That's how either how used to the squeak he was or how much squeak variation there was. I'm not entirely sure which.
Yeah, with me it's just location where the squeaks are, and you can fix that with a bunch of talcum powder. Mind you, if you can get it into the floorboards, it's all carpeted up here, so
Yeah.
there's no chance of that. Oh, sorry guys, in the message, the chat, I was painting. Hey, what's up, Cal? I mean, not Cal. Sorry, my ear trumpet. You know, he didn't say tendonitis.
It's tennis elbow.
A bunch of you guys apparently have tinnitus. A couple other people I know have it. Every once in a while, I'll hear a ringing, but I think since I stopped smoking, that's gone away. So it's probably just not enough oxygen to the brain, which is a pretty regularly occurring thing for me because
I didn't see it
it's so
myself.
hard for the oxygen to actually find the damn thing.
Sorry, Mac. I didn't see your chat. I'm the one with tendonitis. Tendonitis.
Tinnitus.
I guess I do say
Tendon,
tendonitis.
yeah, tendon is with like your tendons and your arms and your legs and stuff. It's a bit different.
Yeah, well, English was never my strong suit. First off,
English?
I live in Hillbilly Central, and I was raised by a Southern hillbilly.
Aren't they all?
Oh no,
Is
northern
Northern way, I guess. I don't
northern
know.
hillbillies are stagnant pond water. Southern hillbillies are raw sewage.
Dang, that's pretty rough.
Do a variation. Now you might be a redneck. You might be a southern hillbilly if you live near raw sewage. I used to love that. My favorite one was is if your new
Jeff
TV
Foxworthy.
sits on top of your old TV, like, oh my God, we're rednecks.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many of them.
Yeah, we actually did that for a while too. The TV on top of a TV, but that was just because
Yeah.
that was back in the day when you could actually be waiting for the TV repairman. Now it's just like, oh, your TV
Mm.
don't work, throw it out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's almost
and
no
the old
repairing that shit.
yeah, and the old TV like looked like a piece of furniture. It had the wood thing
Yep,
around it, and sometimes you even had like a door that can slide over the screen,
close.
so it doesn't really look like you were watching like you had two TVs.
Yep. I've still got a stereo. It's not mine actually. It's my buddy's, who left it here. Oh my God, like 14 years ago. He
Mm.
was going through a divorce and he needed a place to store stuff, because he didn't want to get a storage unit. And some of the stuff was, stuff he didn't want his ex to know about. So I'm like, dude, I got room in my garage. And, you know, uh, almost one whole car's garage worth of garage was just his stuff. And he slowly got it all out. Now I've got this giant freaking stereo that's I kid you not, it's easily 5 feet long, couple of feet wide and deep, and there's no speakers to it. That's just the stereo. It's like this massive freaking thing, and it's just a radio and a phonograph. Now you can fit one of those in a briefcase, an
Yeah.
attaché case, not like a really thin one. You get
Oh,
for
there was.
Walmart for like $50.
Sorry,
Yeah.
there was I don't think it was Jeff Foxworthy, but there was I just remembered there was an excellent redneck joke I seen online one time. If you spend thousands of dollars on video game equipment, but don't see why, oh crap, what was it? Oh yeah, just so you don't have to buy a computer, you might be a redneck.
Hey now, I have let's see, I have the PlayStation 2, 4, an Xbox 360.
All my best games and
Yeah,
best saves are on 360.
Let's say that's 10.
yeah. I prefer, if I'm going to play video games, I prefer the console. Um, Mostly because there was a
That
time where
depends on the game.
the consoles were better for that and cheaper.
Yeah.
And now it's like a gaming computer is going to cost you $1,500 minimum.
Well, that's where the joke is: thousands of dollars on gaming equipment just so you don't have to buy a computer.
Hmm. Well, yeah, because you can buy it in installments, and it's a little investment at a time, as opposed to like when we bought my son's new computer. This is $1,500, boom, all at once.
And that's if you're buying the cheap version of a gaming computer.
Well, this is a couple years ago. It was actually at the time it was pretty top of the line, but
Yeah.
then I think it died, and I think we got him a step or two down because he wasn't playing that many video games to warrant it, and
Yeah.
his
Well,
mom didn't really like the idea of spending that kind of money on a gaming computer. Dude, I swear to God, I'm going to kick you.
yeah,
Come on, where are
In the
you,
toilet?
Chewy? Okay, screw you.
yeah, I at some point got to see if I can get a computer, like a better computer. Yeah. Oh, shit, I was gonna say. Oh yeah, some games are better for playing on console if you ask me because they're kind of controller orientated.
Yeah,
Some games are straight up you do not want to play on a computer. Like I was telling you the other day with Justin, Space Engineers. Space Engineers has so many commands that literally you could give every single button on a keyboard a command.
Sure.
So you're better off playing on a keyboard with that.
Yeah. I haven't really been in the mood for a video game in a long time. I haven't seen anything.
I've been on and
Be
off.
right back.
I found a really like it is a joke game, but it's joke in a good way. Journey to the Savage Planet.
Never even heard of it.
Oh, it is. Well, it's on Xbox Game Pass, so I originally played it for free, but it is totally worth getting. It's like a $30 game. It's not a long game because it's only $30, but
Mhm.
it is totally worth it. You don't technically die in that one, but it's a real pain in the ass when you do, when your character dies, and you have to go back and get your stuff, and then you get to hear the computer berate you for dying.
It sounds like No Man's Sky. If you died, you'd respawn, but all your gear was at this little floating tombstone, and you have to go back and get it. And
Yeah,
that
and that's pretty much it at this one. But like I said, you get to hear the computer berate you,
hello. No
and
Man's Sky was a
you're
good game.
back. It's
What do you
hilarious.
want?
It's also got it's totally a joke game through and through. It's like making fun of what happens if big business rules the galaxy, and yet you're playing you're working for a big business that doesn't seem like such bad compared to the other ones.
Trying to trim my dog, so I carry these scissors around with me everywhere.
Yeah,
And every time because he hates it. I don't know why. He just hates it. So I'm getting a little chunk
you're
at a
hurting his hair.
time. Yeah, but what does he care? You know,
I don't know. One of my dog. That's not my mother's dogs that don't live there anymore. Uh, she absolutely hates being brushed.
really. Oh, he loves being brushed.
No, you take a brush to her, she runs for her life.
Really. Maybe they started out with the wrong kind of brush.
We started off with a brush,
What is that?
with a dog brush. That's a
Chick.
chicken.
Oh, I couldn't tell because some of the icons are actually blocking your face.
So is that future food or a pet?
It's a future egg layer. This is a leghorn. You don't want to eat one of those. They'll lay
Well,
300
there's
eggs
two
a
types
year.
of food. There's
She's
there's the egg layers and there's the edibles.
yeah. No, yeah, she's not. Yeah, she's not a
But
broiler.
you don't really want to take an egg layer as a pet because then they start laying eggs in your house, and then you don't know it until somebody breaks the rotten egg after it's been there for 3 months.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we have a pen in the back. A nice little run. A pretty big run for. I could probably have more than we're allowed to. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
either coffee or bean. I'm not sure. My kids named
I
her.
need to see about cleaning up our chicken coop, and getting it moved someplace where it's easier to see the chickens, and get a little run set up so they don't get eaten by the freaking coyotes or taken off by predatory birds.
Yeah, yeah. Here, I hear owls in the middle of the night just hooting all the time.
Oh yeah, owls, eagles, they'll go for chickens, no problems.
Yeah. Okay, she's good. She had pasted butt
Chickens
last
have
week.
no real defense against another bird. I mean,
Yeah,
male chickens can kind of attack upwards, but if a eagle or owl gets the drop on them, they're dead.
yeah, yeah. They're It's funny because we're only allowed. We're in the suburbs, so can't really have roosters. So we did have for a little bit.
Yeah.
We had to get rid of him. He was cool. He was like a
We had a rooster that best friends with our corgi.
That must have
oh
been cute.
cool.
You
That
could
was-
literally, if you stood on the porch, you would literally watch chicken chase corgi one direction, corgi chase chicken another direction.
That must have been cute as hell.
Yeah. One day we had to get rid of the chickens because predators and I think disease had killed off all but him.
Hmm.
20 chickens. He was the lone survivor.
Yeah,
That's too
And
bad.
we just couldn't keep him anymore unless we wanted to get more chickens, which why bother if there's just 20 of them and they were gone within 2 years.
yeah. Yeah, you get a lot of attrition. Even like we started with 6, and then we got 3 the next year, and then waited a couple of years and got another 3. We were now we're down to 3 because of the dog. The neighbor's dog got in and killed
Yeah.
them.
Well, at
Um,
least you can understand what happened. We don't even understand what happened, so we decided not to get any more. We
yeah.
gave him. We gave the male. His name was Alfie, to a friend of ours who had actually turkeys, and he kept trying to woo the female turkey.
Okay.
He had no
I'm gonna
fears of
put
the
her.
male turkey either.
I'm gonna put her back. She's probably getting a little cold.
He was straight up the Chihuahua going, "Come at me, bitch," with that male turkey.
Huh, really?
Our friend said he never bullied the male turkey, but the male turkey never challenged him either. Oddly enough, so he got to live out the rest of his life trying to woo a female turkey. I don't know if it ever actually worked.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, it's not going to work out. Two different
Yeah.
worlds, all that stuff. Frederick, what I would do is I would have the ship land, a ship from another world, and uh, NPCs come out of the ship and try and deal with the medieval inhabitants of that world, trying to buy and sell and trade goods and things like that.
Or you could just do Warhammer 40k style. They come in, claim the planet. All right, now you tithe to us.
And maybe have some of the player characters uh, join up as NPCs. In Traveler, you can actually roll up barbarian characters from low tech worlds, and Doctor Who from time to time had companions that were primitive, so to speak.
Leela.
And there's a famous comic book. I think it's Star Slayer from I think Marvel Comics, and it's literally about a Highlander who gets more or less abducted from his home, or from Earth back in the day, to become the new captain of this interstellar spaceship.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I only have the first one. I mean, I've got a bunch more, but I'm trying to recollect from one on again because a lot of my comic books I know are in really bad condition. So if I buy stuff online, there's a good chance it's in better condition than some of my really old stuff. And they're dirt cheap. A lot
Well,
of
that
comic.
reminds me, Shadow. I I have talked to my mother, who has a bunch of car, cards. They're not magic cards. They're DC, Marvel,
Hmm.
some some Star Trek. I don't think there's any Star Wars cards. And she, okay, that needs to be mixed up a little bit more. She would be interested in potentially selling them.
I'd have to see them, but to be
You
honest,
could take pictures.
yeah, they're probably not worth that much. Most of the sets from the like I want to say 90s and 2000s, you're lucky to be able to get $10 a complete set. The I don't know when it was, but I don't even think they make those kind of cards anymore. Like every year there'd be a new set of collectible cards, and it would be full of chase cards and holograms and stuff like that. And I haven't seen anything like that in 20 plus years. And I've got binders. I've got a stack of binders easily 5 feet thick, full of X Men, Spider Man, Marvel, DC, all the big sets from back in the day. The Death of Superman set, and I can't get shit for them.
Okay.
But I'd be willing to take a look. What's the worst RPG system you've played? Um, here's the thing. With the right people, the right GM, and the right frame of mind, you can turn any shitty game into a great time. But strictly speaking, mechanically, I would have to say Death in Space is literally the worst mechanics and game environment I've ever seen. Let me think. Is there anything worse? Yes, the superhero 20 2044, which was literally the very first superhero role playing game, is right up there. Maybe even worse. Just an absolute hot mess of a RPG, and I own it. I just pulled it out recently to talk about it, and it's it's got some interesting artwork in it. I will admit that, but it is awful. Speaking of awful, I'm going to make my dog very unhappy. Come here. You're never going to escape this room until you let me cut off some of your hair. I'm making a new dog, and I want some of your hair.
Now we just need move. Now we just need some creepy la 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 music, and he can be the Clipper from Courage the Cowardly Dog, the barber. Excuse me. But
Yeah,
then I was naughty.
I've played 5e, Fred, but I've never played 4. I've played third. I played Pathfinder. I've technically played Shadow Dark. I played BX and Basic and first and second edition. I never actually played White Box, but I'm going to be running a White Box game sometime this year. Take care, Fred. It's always a pleasure seeing you again, bro. Um,
See us.
but yeah, there's some stinker games out there. But the I think the key factor with all really good games is the enthusiasm of the GM. If the GM, I've seen shitty mechanics uh, turned into a good time if the GM's like, I mean, like really pumped to play a game. If he can't wait to play X game, whatever it might be, chances are you're going to be in for a good time, at least until the rubber hits the road with take care, Fred, with like uh, combat or skill resolution or maybe chases and escapes, which are about the all you really need in role playing. Those three mechanics, and if you can make them pretty easy to wrap your head around, unlike one of the games I'm reading now. Um, in a nutshell, it's 3d6. Got to beat a target of 11. You get a skill and maybe a stat bonus. Sounds like Traveler, but then depending on your um, what you're doing and what the possible negatives are, and depending on how much you beat it by the success, the extra successes kind of thing. Uh, I know it sounds a lot like Traveler, but it took them many, 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 many pages to explain that. Uh, you played a sci-fi Shadow Dart thing, right? Yeah, I'm playing it. Well, it's not sci-fi. It's Gonzo, Mac. We're playing on OGGM's game again this Saturday at like I want to say noon my time. We've been in medieval fantasy to now we're in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That don't ask me how, but we ended up there. It's kind of a dimension hopping game. It's fun, but it's not because of the mechanics. What's up, Raven? You know where the link is. You're always welcome to
No,
pop
she
in.
doesn't. Raven never knows where the link is. She just magically appears.
Well, if you say her name 3 times, that's how it works.
Your turn, George. You say her name.
Raven.
There you go. She said she'll be here in a minute. But yeah, um, it's a fun game, but it's not because the rules are anything spectacular. Um, and for me, I really don't like any game that like says you can only go up to this level. Is in my opinion is just asking, if not begging, for the game to end sooner than the players want it to. I've never been in a game with a set limit like Palladium or what was that one? Index Card RPG and a couple of superhero games that are like that, where you max out at 10 or 15th level, and I'm like, you really got to bump that back a bit, because especially when you first learn the system and you're first starting to play it, there's a high chance that the GM is going to kind of let you go up levels maybe faster than you should, just because we're all used to it. I like it having just a set number of XP requirement off to infinity, and if you get it, you get it. Cool. Then that way there's no pressure to let you advance, nor any pressure to hold you down. If you keep playing, or you get to a maxing out limit and you don't feel maxed out, then it sort of leaves a bad taste in my mouth when I think about it. It's just keep going, just keep playing.
If you have to have levels as the reason why you're playing, you are a boring player.
It's not about that. It's a matter of being able to gauge your own success along uh, non-partial arbiter. You got to understand that the very first, if not 99% of all role-playing games have levels, and the dopamine hit that you get when you've made that arbitrary plateau, you've hit that next level, that peak. It does something physically to you, as well as emotionally and mentally. You feel you've done something above and beyond the normal. You've accomplished something that nobody can take away from you. You've hit it. You've got the points. You've earned them. You've done the things. Boom. Now, I play a lot of games where there are no levels, and they tend to be uh, much more toned down in the way of any sort of power fantasy games. There
I mean, man,
is,
I don't need to level up to feel like I've achieved something.
uh, yeah, I get that, but
Like to the point, I forget to level up my character sometimes.
uh,
Like already in Bruce's game, there was a time I needed to go up 2 levels, and I forgot to level up to the point. I had 2 levels I needed to
nice
go up,
count.
and Bruce is like, "Have you leveled up yet?" No shit, I haven't, because I don't need that endorphin rush of I
It's not
have
a matter
leveled
of
up.
needing it; it's a matter of enjoying it. You're there to enjoy the game, and there's no real wrong way to enjoy the game unless you're disrupting the game for
Well,
everybody
I'm
else.
going to take a maxi
Hmm.
out stance on this. If I want to play a game where I level up quickly, I'll play a video game.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that.
Only thing I don't like
You do
about
you, bro.
leveling is keeping track of XP. It's so tedious. Like it sounds silly, but you just like it. We're doing an OSR game, and we got these like, which is it's a great game, and I'm not knocking the game.
Mm.
But like we have these additional rules for exploration and stuff like that, where you get some XP, and some of your XP goes to your retainer, and some can go to you, and when you bring back
Uh,
all the gold, you get this, and I'm like, okay, now it's like
See,
I'm just like I don't know what to do. Like I'm just like, and I'm thinking I'm missing out because I'm like I must be doing some of the math wrong because everybody's like leveling quicker than me, but I think because
yeah,
I'm playing
I
paladin, but
prefer, or I tend to think that that's the GM's job. The player's responsibility is their one character, and managing, feeding and the care, etc., of NPCs, retainers, etc. Yes, that's their job, but it's up to me as the GM to determine whether or not they've gone up levels, things like that. They don't need to mess around with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important for the players to know the level of their retainers, but yeah, leveling up, that's especially given the fact that I kind of take a stance with Max Liao that I don't like players having too much in the way of henchmen, because I don't want the players to be able to build 6 characters so they can mid max their first character.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think why not? If that's what the player character wants to do, cool. It's my job to uh, say how hard it is and when they're successful and when they failed. It's not my job to prevent them from doing what they want.
Oh, if they want to
Right.
have 5 characters take care of that per character themselves, that's one thing. But especially
That's
where it's my responsibility to take care of their henchmen's experience, that means I am also responsible for taking care of their levels. I'm not going to let you mid max your henchmen to the point that, oh, by the way, thanks to these six little things that my 6 henchmen did, I can one shot a ancient black dragon who's wearing immortality armor.
well, that's a dumb DM that lets that
Right.
happen. You just add
We
zeros. You know,
we do like a 3d6 down the line. Well, not 3D down. We roll down the line. So I think we do have some modifiers besides just 3d6 straight. And so
Mhm.
like yeah, you couldn't really let's say oh I'm gonna have like something that works synergetically with each other because you just get end up with what you find what you roll. The one thing I do like because we have retainers, but we also have what he's calling we're referring to as a backup character, which is
Mhm.
acting like a retainer normally, but they are rolled by us, and if you die, you can just keep playing with him that person, and they could
Yep.
be on the along with you. So it's sort of it's useful because I nearly died. I was I was incapacitated in one moment, and I ended up at least
And
staying at the table playing.
Cal, thank you. Yeah, for me as a player, I grew up with a lot of stingy DMs, and uh, I have no problem handing out crazy amounts of treasure and loot. It's just keys to bigger and badder, or more badass adventures. And NPCs, all kinds of shit going on. I'm guessing that's Omen. I do believe I was right. I do believe PCs should have henchmen, retainers, hirelings, whatever. Uh, and I don't understand how uh, NPCs crafting would allow you to one shot a freaking godlike dragon. They shouldn't be giving you bonuses to hit or to damage or things like that. They're there to
Oh,
support you. And
I,
if
I've
for
I've
some
been
reason,
watching Bruce, and I've already seen what Connell does. And this is the scenario of events I see: gravity bow, another spell, another spell, another spell, another spell. Oh, my arrow now does 10,000 million damage.
well, that's because
Or
they're
it
playing
literally now,
Pathfinder.
with this combination of spells, it's literally designed to one shot a god,
Yeah, that's
which can
because
only be
Pathfinder
cast
is,
if I cast it in this order with these type of magic users.
yeah,
That's why I'm not. If you want to build up characters that you have to maintain yourself, go right ahead. I will let you build those characters, but you have to do that yourself.
yeah.
If
I think
I am
Justin said it
maintaining the
best.
levels, the experience, and therefore the levels of your retainers, I'm not letting you build them like that.
The game shouldn't work like that. It's
Right.
broken.
Tell me any game that does not have that potential combination, even Palladium.
AD&D, D&D, up until maybe third edition didn't allow anything like
Pathfinder.
that.
I'm going to bring this up. Yeah, you can do that, but you're also ignoring the fact that I really don't care if you one shot the monster. A lot of times,
Yeah.
you're still
Well, no, I'm just,
babysitting them. You're not really
I'm,
what you're doing is you're facing off against 20 or 30 individuals against a dragon. It's not a one shot. You're doing it against a large group. And
well, no,
you know, I understand what you're saying, but that's true of any party if they really get that synergy with them.
well, no, I'm not saying I don't want them to be able to do it. I'm saying that they're not going to be able to do it for free.
Oh well, yeah. I
If
mean,
they
look,
if they want to take the time to build like 5 characters, like their own characters, they're maintaining them, they're leveling them up, blah 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 blah, and then they're capable of doing that through those 5 characters, I will allow it. They just aren't going to do
Oh,
it for
cow, that's
free
funny.
as players. That's all.
I don't. Well, the way I look at it is this is the part. Again, I've been playing Axe and the old D&D, which a lot of people forget about. You can actually find the Dungeon Master's Guide where it says 20 or less gets this evasion, and we haven't been doing it in our 1A D&D game. But when I've been playing Axe, we tend to have 12 to 15 effectively NPCs, which
Yep.
include war dogs and summon
Yep.
monsters and
Sure.
all of that.
And
And
none of that like stacks in the way Pathfinder does to give you those kinds of crazy combos. Everybody's their own individual actions. The best you get is someone casting a fire arrow on somebody's arrow, which will do a little bit of extra damage, but not much. Or maybe in a quick enchant weapon that'll give them +1 on their weapon unless they make it permanent. It's going to go away. All that video game stacky, stuff is literally, a sort of in either a Magic the Gathering or video game inspired set of mechanics that just make for games where people plan out their character's life before they've lived it.
so even in Axe, every time your henchman goes up a level, you roll to see if they stay with you.
Right.
That's fun. And then you go, you start going through. The other part is, and this is the thing that people forget about, at least for Axe, is guess what? Each henchman takes off 50% of your XP as a share. So, they're getting a half share. Well, it doesn't seem like much, but if you get 4 henchmen, that's equivalent to 2 more NPCs. And if you do that for each player, it's now take you 3 times as long to advance.
Yep.
Well, and and then we're talking to Shadow about stuff, and if one of my characters gets high enough level, you can break a game. That's true of any game.
Yep.
And so there's a certain point.
Uh, not the way I run things. Oh, and no one player is going to break the game or character.
I mean, I was looking at. I'll give you a perfect example. Once you get Wish, also you get Wish, all of a sudden you can effectively break the game. But guess what? It's not any fun to play anymore at that point. If you're breaking the
That
game,
depends on the player.
well, maybe for the player, it isn't fun for everybody else.
Yeah.
And even for myself, I'm like, oh, look, I broke the game. Well, guess what? I can be a dungeon master and solo role play at that point, and then I can break whatever rule I feel like.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that's it. Well, great. Then why am I playing with the group if I can already that's my goal? And then don't get me wrong, there's certain players that are just there to be jerks. And like I was talking with Shadow, when we play our 1E D&D game, look, I know how to break the monk, but what happens is that you're not playing as a role-playing experience, which people forget about. I have to agree with this. It's a cooperative group experience. If you're not doing the cooperative part, then why are you playing with anybody? That's the whole point. Oh, look, you guys can sit back and do nothing. Like, well, that's boring. But yeah, I mean, you basically at a certain point you can get small armies with henchmen. And yes, if you get a bunch of magic using henchmen, that works out too. But it allows you to do other crap too. The players are not omniscient. Guess what? Your henchmen can be, oh, well, this guy's going to betray me. This guy's going to do this. You can get that over time, especially if you don't treat your henchmen well.
Yep.
And you're like,
Yep.
but you were there for for the last year with me, and you were helping me out. I'm like, yeah, remember that time you shafted me a few magic items and you threw me into here?
Or not even that. They could have been a spy or a plant, if you will, from the very beginning, and that was just that they got hired because you slighted somebody else. They hired the NPC to come join you and try and off you when the time was right, or feed
I
him
never
information.
I never said I wouldn't allow NPCs. I'm just saying if you want to do these weird ass combos, you have to make the characters yourself. If you're using NPCs a lot, your own henchmen, I'm going to be in controlling of them leveling up.
Well,
And
yeah,
Right.
if you don't like their choice for how they leveled up, that's too bad. They're their own individual.
yeah. See, that's the thing is in the old days, uh, player characters ran player characters. GMs ran all the NPCs. If it's an NPC, i.e., a henchman, a follower, or a hireling, that's not a player character's. They don't run them. They run their character.
I'll be a little
That's
bit
not how I
different.
see a lot of people do it when you watch Let's Plays. They
I,
let the
I'm gonna
player
be
run the NPCs.
Well, it
I'm
depends
be a
on the
little bit
game, I
different.
guess.
It's a hybrid. To me, I do a hybrid, which is you're allowed to play the NPC as long as they act reasonably and in their own interest.
Right.
And no, their own interest in a group is usually the group's interest. That said, is if you use them as disposable or anything else, I'm like, no,
Best
they aren't
Hobbit.
doing that action.
Yeah.
I have the ability to override whatever choice you have that PC to do, and
I
that's
can
what
see
the
that.
difference is. And the other part comes down to it is, like I said, we're playing with it. Guess what? I can run with a much smaller player group if I have a bunch of henchmen.
Yeah.
But we give him 50% XP. We give him 50% gold, which may not seem like that big of a deal, but it is.
Wait a
especially,
minute. Wait a
place
minute.
like
What do you
Act-
mean 50% XP? What do you mean 50% XP for the henchman?
That's the rule for Axe. Henchmen get half XP. They get half the gold that they
Oh, see,
normally.
that's not how I've been doing it.
No. But I'm saying you're a henchman. That's the understanding is you get a half share is what I'm trying to say. You don't get all.
Maybe in loot, maybe if that's the deal. But I give that if there's 20 characters including NPCs in a battle, I'm dividing the XP by 20.
That's fine. I'm saying, but for when we do it, for Axe, you get half gold, you get a half share. You get a half share of XP, you get a half share of the gold. That said is that still slows down players down a lot.
Yeah.
It really does. All of a sudden you're going at half the rate, which okay, that may not seem like a huge deal, but now you're going half the level. The other
You
problem
know
is,
it sucks. You know what sucks though, is when like you've got say you've got 10 NPCs in the party,
yeah,
and you fight a couple monsters, they get their XP, and then they die.
yeah, exactly.
So that XP is just thrown away essentially.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what's even worse is, and people forget that's about one ED&D. Once your henchman gets at your level or above,
They
he
leave.
leaves, and that may not seem like a big deal. It is if your henchman is a thief or a cleric. That's very easy to happen because you're looking at 2x, for every level.
Yeah.
Well, what happens when you get level drained?
Mm-hmm.
What happens if your character's out for, well, okay, I have to stay out of a couple of adventures, but your henchmen, and, to be fair on some of this, henchmen have their own goals.
Yeah,
If you
they
roll
should.
it, and this is why I said
Yeah.
Axe, and I'm using Axe because that's what we've really been playing it. It's that if every level, well, at a certain point, you can still be friends, but he's like, well, guess what? I'm going to do my own thing now. Thank you very much. And you see this in books and everything else. What's the example with Moonglum was with me. Well, that's great, but he had several other adventures with him that said, guess what?
Well, hopefully, Cal, we're fixing that. I know sometimes you have some issues up there with Omen, I guess his son called. But I assure you, most of the time that's because a lot of times they can't hear you or people are just so exuberant to help. But I lost your connection. Well, get back in here whenever you want, or maybe that's him back in.
Yeah.
He's in Texas.
Well, no.
Oh,
I don't know what happened, but no. But again, the whole thing is NPCs leave. They do, and if your characters, and again, the reason I like using Axe is once your characters hit 14th level, your henchmen are going to leave once they hit 14th level. They're going to go off and create their own, or your henchmen start becoming vassals, and they become like your dukes of your lands.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, guess what? They're going to go do this over here, and in fact, you want henchmen to do that.
Yep.
You want to expand it out, and
well, especially with that's part of the title of the game, Adventure Conquer King.
yeah, exactly.
You want them to do that. You want to actually get to the domain play, which is weird for me. I find that weird that they what does it top out at, like 14th level or something?
Yeah, but that's a whole empire's worth. And 14th level, don't get me wrong, 14th level, and I listened to Alexander Macris talk about some of this. He said what he found was that if they had 14th level players, oddly enough, knew that there was an ending and they were willing to work towards that ending, but when it was just you as unlimited, a lot of them said, okay, we're out. And it allowed him to do a whole campaign. They got to the campaign, they got to 14th level.
Kind of what I was thinking is I would have done it 15, just make it even 5, 5, and 5. Five
Well,
levels you're an adventurer, 5 levels you're conqueror, and 5 levels as the king.
Well, it is kind of like that. If you look at 1 through 4 is the adventurer, 5 through 9 is your conqueror, and then 9 through 14 is your king.
Okay.
And you also have to remember this was based off the old BX, which remember expert ended at 14th level. So that's what he kind of based it off of.
Okay.
But it wasn't so high of a level that players kept on going forever. They kind of felt like, okay, I've done this. Now, that said is, you're not, unlike a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, you're not locked into it. It's like, well, guess what? Once you've hit a certain level, you can relearn skills. You can relearn proficiencies. You can relearn a lot of this stuff. So guess what? When you're the adventurer and you want to be kick-ass, great. At a certain point, when you want to be at the king level, you're like, well, you know what? Leadership matters more than this.
Yep.
Martial matters more than this. And then you stop becoming the badass adventurer level, and you're like, okay, I want more henchmen. Oh, okay, well that's worth more than getting this extra attack per round or so.
Yeah, because as a GM, I wouldn't want to see X King, going out more than like one time onto the battlefield. You know what I mean? Like Theoden type of thing. You get that one last hurrah where you put on the armor, and it's a little tighter than it used to be, and it feels heavier than it used to be because you're 35 to 55 or whatever. You get that one last hurrah for the kingdom, and then from that point on, it's just diplomacy.
Well, and that's, or you're raising your armies to go do the whole aspect. Well, at that point, I don't need to be the badass with the sword. I've got my henchmen or whatever that are the badass with the sword, and henchmen are limited. For X, your maximum number of henchmen are generally like 9 total. Unlike D&D's, where you could get up to like 17 plus.
Right.
Well, and I'm saying AD&D, but there's a lot of stuff in there, and if you aren't, I use charisma as everyone used it as a dump stat when I was a kid, and of course it's a dump stat unless you really play with henchmen. Once you play with henchmen and retainers in that group, then it suddenly becomes the overpowered stat because now you're rolling in with a small army, and they're fanatically loyal. This is what people forget about with paladins. Paladins, they all look at their special abilities. Go look at their bonuses for reaction and morale, and all of a sudden you find that they are supposed to be the leader on the battlefield with their huge number of.
Sorry, Cal. Armor?
Yeah.
This little chainmail bikini? Yeah. Nice.
But the other point is, I'm looking at there. He says where there's no cooperation with my character. Well, they're henchmen. They take up a slot. You have a limited number. Now, hirelings are a whole different thing. They're not going to try working with your character. But
yeah, it's all about the paycheck.
Yeah, exactly. That said, we can all remember, which people forget about. But if you actually look at, who was the great revolutionary hero? Benedict Arnold. Great revolutionary hero. Well, he felt slighted and he left. And that's why, they so despised him. Because you won one of the biggest battles in the Revolutionary War, and then you turned on them because you had a spending habit and your wife wanted more money.
Yep.
And those are things that are cool. The other part is, and I wish D&D had a better job, which is where I think Axe has done. And we'll see. I'll have to do Domains of War at some point. D&D never had really a good war game system. and that was part of the problem that D&D had. So it was hard to get those massive arms, which became more narration than they did combat. I say this, I'm sure Gygax had his own stuff, and they did have chainmail, which I believe chainmail said in AD&D, hey, if you want to do big battles, use chainmail. So
Yep,
I never played
it did.
chainmail. I never even saw a chainmail. So,
Yeah. Well,
but
swords and spells, you can use swords and spells too. But I honestly preferred battle systems. If you remember that from second edition.
I had it. I love the idea. It just never seemed like it was fleshed out right. Whereas, and this helps with Alexander Macris, he actually has done this. Guess what? A unit size is this big. So, your fireball might only hit one unit, which is still big. Don't get me
Yep.
wrong. We said,
Yep.
but it's more related to. And I think D&D did some of this. Like, what's lightning equivalent to? That's equivalent to a cannonball that goes straight, which a lot of people don't forget about. And then the big explosion. Well, that's like a piece of artillery going off, and for fireball. Yeah, I mean, there's really cool stuff in there, and this is why I like Axe. But again, to be fair, he's had 10 years alone to use that system, let alone 40 years of experience playing BX and AD&D. So that helps you really refine it. Whereas, and I think that's the problem that you have with Wizards of the Coast. We can knock Gygax for certain issues. At the end of the day, he was a gamer. He really cared about games. He played the war games, and the newer people coming into D&D or anything else, or even Pathfinder, aren't. They aren't real war gamers in most cases. They're role players, which is good, but you miss that epic scale, or the epic scale becomes narrative per se. It's nice to have that nice overlap where you can have the rules and still allow players to do certain things. You can go either way. But like I said, I really like Axe, but let's be honest, it's a 1,500-page system. Actually, it's almost...
Yeah, that's pretty heavy duty, dude.
Well, let's be honest. It's about 300 pages for the player's handbook, which is about, when you include the font size, which is about the equivalent of the first edition player's handbook. The Dungeon Master's Guide, it's probably better written than the Dungeon Master, but again, you have 40 years of experience. But look at the font size of the old DMG, of the player's handbook, and everything else. And that font size is so small that it would be the equivalent of twice as thick of a book, or maybe even 3 times. It's 8-point font versus 10 or 11. That makes a big difference. I mean, if I have to buy one of those books now, it's just like, all right, let me get the magnifying glass. So those were very, very detailed. But the actual rules, they're not that hard. You start looking, it's like, well, what's the spells for this one? Okay, so you start adding those up. What are the magic items? Okay, well, we've got the treasure tome, which is in beta right now. I'm waiting for my physical books next month for Axe, which are going to be 13 pounds a book.
I was thinking I'm actually going to have to start breaking out the Encyclopedia Magica for my Sunday game, because you probably noticed that yes, I hand out a lot of magic items, but I've also almost exhausted the ones from the DMG / Unearthed Arcana. There's some things that are just never going to be found, or at least not for a long time. Like the Carpet of Flying. I used to be like a real big fan of it, but now I'm like, it seems kind of dorky to me now. Does that make any sense?
Well,
I picturing the characters. What was that cartoon? Was it Luno? I think with the unicorn, not the unicorn, the Pegasus, or was it some other cartoon where the characters
one of the Hanna-Barbera ones?
Yeah, where they're flying around on a flying carpet, and I'm just like, that's just freaking retarded.
I don't remember the cartoon much, but I just remember it was always at the beginning of that sort of intro for the Hanna-Barbera World of Super Adventures, and you'd see the Pegasus and the flying carpet.
Yeah, it was just like.
See you later, Mac.
Take care, Mac.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that I'm even against a lot of magic items, and I'm not even against common magic items. It just seems that to be fair on this, and this is what I'm trying to laugh at for my character. It's like, well, what else can I get? They're like, well, okay, I've got a ring of free action, I've got now a ring of spell scoring, and now I've got a ring of protection +3. All very good items. Said is, I'm only allowed to use 2 of them. Okay. I've got bracers of AC 0. Okay, very good. It's like, all right, I mean, and I'm half jokingly saying this to you, but my character now has an armor class of -7.
I can still hit you.
Oh, I know. I think that
your character's already doing something that puts him out of combat range. So, that's more valuable than all the magic items in the world, is being at the right place at the right time. Have any of you guys ever given out a broom of flying, or had one, or seen one in a game?
No, but that's more because I didn't play Magic Users when I was a kid.
Okay.
Really.
I've never given one out, nor have I ever seen one in a game.
I think a broom of flying works really well, depending on the type. How do I want to put this? Because
Palladium does have them, but it's only for witches.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I'm thinking that in certain ways, and this is where it comes into it, is I think not all magic items are supposed to be used in there. I know you're not doing it, but I think that there are several times that the way Gygax did it is whenever you got hit by a big spell, whether it's a fireball or a flame strike or something of like 3rd level or better, or when the dragon did his stuff, he started making you save against your equipment. That the idea was, guess what? The equipment starts getting destroyed, and you have enough magic items to replace it.
I actually do it with certain things, but like, for example, a fireball. I don't think a fireball would melt a ring.
No, but I do think it would catch a cloak on fire.
Yeah.
That's what I'm referring to. It's not every.
And if a cloak is already like +1 or 2, maybe I would look at the saving throw and see how many times out of 20 it would fail, and if it's going to make the save more than half the time, I look at it, unless it's acid, because even a fireball isn't going to, because a fireball goes on and off real quick.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, like, if you were to take a flamethrower, right, and hit a flame retardant tarp with a quick burst, it's not going to catch on fire.
Well, it depends on what type of fuel you're using, to be fair.
Right. If it's like napalm or something sticky, sure. But if it's just gas, or something like that, a quick burst, it's not going to catch on fire. Nor are many of the things. I do it usually with acid, lava, and some dragon breaths. Otherwise, it doesn't seem like it's going to do it. And lightning.
Well, I mean, for an example, it's not that I'm against all of it. And I would say, hey, what catches, what doesn't. Yeah. But the idea was I can give out a lot of cloaks because I burn up a lot of cloaks. I mean, that's what I'm referring to.
Okay, I can see that.
Well, the other part is, and I think this is where Gygax was talking about it, is I agree with the rings. Well, guess what? Your fireball isn't going to catch something on fire unless it's on there long enough to truly melt it. But just like I know we talked about this before with crushing blow. I'm not going to use a crushing blow until you start fighting a giant or something of that size. And then guess what? Now your shield has to save against a crushing blow.
Or the 10-ton stone block or something like that. Sure.
But it's rare. And to be fair, the players at that point probably have multiple shields. They have multiple.
I was just thinking about that, though. I don't think I've given out that many actual cloaks, have
I? No. Well,
like 2 or 3?
No, I'm referring. Well, no, you can out more than that. What I'm referring to is that Gygax as a dungeon master.
Oh yeah,
I think looked at. I'm just saying what the way because I was listening to his son talk about Luke one time about this was. You don't worry about giving those items. Just like I don't worry about giving scrolls a lot of times. I don't worry about giving wands.
Hi, Raven.
Is if you're limited, if you have a limited number, I won't say limited. If it has a limited number of charges or stuff, you can give out a lot of scrolls. Guess what? You can be like, I am super powered with the scrolls. Absolutely. But guess what? Scrolls go away. They're a one-use item. And, hey, Raven. We did the same thing with those protection from undead scrolls. Which you're
Sure.
like, oh man, you did this.
I hoard scrolls that aren't ones I made, like a dragon hoards gold.
Yeah, but I don't. The point of these is that they're supposed to be disposable items, and the more you use them, the more you should be getting them. And
Yep.
then,
Well, yeah. Once I know the spell on them, then they're totally disposable. But if I don't know the spell on it, I'm hanging on to that sucker until I can learn it.
well, right. I do that too. But the point of the scrolls is that they're there to be used, and if the players choose not to use them, that's on them. But if I give you protection from undead and you decide not to use, and you're fighting against undead, and I know I've screwed up Shadow a couple times in our games, like, okay, you gave me 2 protection from undead scrolls. I'm going to read the protection from undead scrolls. Like, he forgets
Yep.
about certain ones. And that's
Oh yeah,
fine.
yeah. Because I don't think keeping track of that stuff actually makes for a better game. I think it actually kind of I how many times have you guys done something that I totally spaced on?
Well, but my point being is that guess what? It's limited. It's not like every turn. That's if you're ever going to do a game, it's better to give something with charges or something like that, because if you screw up and go, man, this has really got my game out of whack. Well, it'll reset itself after a little bit because they'll burn through those disposable items.
I suppose.
If the items aren't fully disposable, well, a perfect example is this much. And I'm not saying that you want to be a dick about it. That's the other part, which I think that a lot of players look at. If you have a ship, let's use Traveler as a perfect example. If you have a ship, if you don't treat that ship right, it's a disposable item.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we're going to
very
merge Raven
explosive.
with the ship so it can constantly regrow, just like a Wraith Hive ship.
So a pentapod ship. Yeah, no, but that's the whole point is, guess what? Now it's the same reason whenever you give like firearms. If I give a certain number of charges or bullets or something like that, they're going to run out if they aren't careful. And if you use like Shadows talked about, if you get your godlike weapon, if there's only a couple of charges on it, great, you've done your fantastic, cool spotlight moment. But I don't have to worry about it happening every game. So, having a nuclear weapon is cool, but you can only use it once.
Yeah.
So how you doing, Raven? What's new with you?
Doing fine. Got me with a mouthful. I just took a drink. Doing fine. Yourself?
Yeah, hanging in there.
I'm expecting
Ready
a
for the
drink
weekend?
tonight myself. He's got
Say
it.
what? What? I didn't hear you. What you?
I said I'm expecting a drink tonight myself. It just has to arrive though.
Okay.
I didn't know you were much of a drinker, Crafting.
A little bit, but my sister, my mother is getting me a giant buzz bomb for my birthday.
Oh,
Well, happy birthday.
She just didn't get paid until today.
Okay.
when's your birthday?
Well, I don't mind saying I celebrate my birthday on the 4th.
Oh, okay. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt.
He's like, I slept in February 4th. No, just
No, it's March because he gets his book choice next Thursday.
okay.
Huh.
A Pisces. Cool.
So, yeah.
I was also born in the year of the goat, if you're curious.
You're the goat.
Goat.
That's cool.
Mine's the pig.
I know a lot of people don't believe in that, but I know a lot of people, and I know it's very easy to start putting that weird stock into. Well, I'm like
I'll
that,
be right back, guys. Hold on a
but
second.
everybody
Right.
who
Carry
knows
on.
me well, and then I tell them to look at the year of the goat, go, oh my god, that is you to a T.
Yeah, there's something to that. Okay, there's a guy that's on YouTube. He goes by the name GG33, and he's a numerologist. He's like a numerologist to all the sports stars and Hollywood stars. I mean, he's up there. He knows his shit though. He takes the Chinese zodiac that we're talking about. Born years ago, I was a horse, fire horse. They take each. Everybody will have at least one element and then an animal. So you can have like a fire horse, a water horse, wood horse, or all that stuff means stuff. But just for the sake of simplicity, you have an enemy sign. So when you look on that zodiac, and the one that's directly across from where whatever you are, that is your enemy sign. And every year it changes. You know, the zodiac changes. When you are in an enemy year, that is not a good time for you to try to switch jobs or buy a house or move or do any major changes at all to your life. They will ultimately be either a failure or they'll be 10 times harder than what it needs to be. Everything will go wrong. And you want to be cautious also of whoever is in your circle of friends or family that are born under your enemy year. And you'll find that those will be the people you'll have conflict with, or so on and so forth. I mean, it's amazing how that stuff works.
Yeah.
It
It
really,
gets even
really does.
it gets even more interesting on that is that everyone looks at the year, but it actually breaks it up by what is it? There's by month, and then it also goes by hour. So you're not just like you said, Raven. You're not just a fire horse. It's also dependent on the month that gives you another sub thing in there, and then your hour that you were born is another
No.
sub part of
Yeah.
that.
And
So
you need that for an astrology chart too.
yeah,
So a full astrology chart will take into account every planet and what house it's in and what sign it's in. But to do it just kind of a shortcut overview, you will look at this, not just the sun sign, but where the moon was, and then what was the rising sign at the time of birth. That's why you need your birth time. Those three things will really be the majority of your personality.
and you're right, crafting, because mine was an ox. Interestingly enough, my father's an ox, I'm an ox, and my son is an ox for the year. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cool. Are you guys
yeah.
a lot alike? You get along well?
Um, yeah, well, I'm more like my father than I would like to admit in certain cases, and less like him than I would like to admit others. Well,
Mhm.
no, it's you know, but that's where like you said, it depends on your elemental sign, which is earth, fire, wind,
Water,
wood,
yeah,
and yeah.
metal.
Uh, so when you start, anyway, I find it interesting. Now, do I believe it? Not so much, because I still think there's a lot to determine an upbringing. So to say that I'm like my father, well, yeah, duh. I mean, he helped raise me. Uh, you know, so there's that aspect, and
Yeah.
I think there's also genetic predispositions. But it is interesting looking at it. But I had friends of mine that we were supposed to be fighting, and we got along really well. And then some people that are supposed to be your complementary signs, I
Hmm.
haven't gotten along with. It's like, well, okay,
Yeah, there's a lot. There's things like karma you have to factor in
yeah,
too, and stuff like that. So I know, and the Eastern system and the Western system don't blend perfectly. That's for sure. But
yeah,
what was I going to say? I just thought. Oh, when it's in your sign, the Chinese zodiac I'm referring to, when it's in your sign, when like the year of the ox, that's the time you really want to go for big changes and really kind of go for broke, take the risks, uh, because everything's going to be in your favor.
I don't know. Wait 12 years to do something.
Well, no, no, no. She what she's saying is that's when it's most fortuitous. Not that you shouldn't be doing things. It's just
Right. And look
it's
at the signs that are friendly. There's usually three signs that will be complementary to whatever your sign is in the Chinese zodiac. Like I know goats, dogs, and horses all get along really well. And the
well.
enemy is, I believe, rat for the horse. If I
So
remember
for
right.
like
But
A lot of
so for like oxes, I mean, interestingly enough, an ox and a rat get along really well, but they also get
mhm,
along with. And normally, what you'll find out, which I think is somewhat true, the one that you get along with the least is the one that's 6 years in age difference, um, which makes sense because you're the one that's least likely to have something similar to that person. Um, So yeah, there's just stuff like that. Anyway, I find it interesting. My friend did that when he said, "Here, you need to go look at this," and I went, "Oh." He said, "No, no, no, no. You need to do this," and he would get mad at me. No, no, you need to know what month you're born. I'm like, dude, I'm not born near the Chinese New Year. I know what sign I
yeah,
because a lot of people forget about that too. Which is if you're
right.
born in January, February, that time frame, you have to make sure that you aren't leaping from one. You get while the year seems to work. you're looking Chinese New Year, not the Gregorian calendar New Year. So,
Right. There was actually 13 zodiac signs in this Western astrology. Um, uh, I think you said Orphucus or Fucius or something like that. It's in between Scorpio and Sagittarius. There was another sign, and
yeah,
they when they redid the calendar and so forth, they just took that one out.
yeah,
But
because that was based more of, like you said, that's based off of more of the, on which are going through. And technically, those signs should still be in, but people want to just do it easily through the months. But you're right. My son was big into constellations, and I went with Dave Matheson has done an interesting thing about stars. If you're really big into stars and stories and mythology, I would
mhm.
recommend getting his stuff on this. But I was out with him along with Randy Paulson, a few other guys, and he was showing the group, and he had this laser pointer, and he was just showing the sky. And people forget just how big constellations are until someone draws them out in the sky. They take up a huge section of the sky, and it's actually pretty cool. And then you start realizing that whether you believe in astrology or not, astronomy as a whole means that there's something out there, and you can use it to guide yourself, going north or south, or finding where you are in the world, where you're located, just on the globe. And it's not a skill that a lot of people have. And yet I can
Yeah.
go to my son, like, well, which star is this? He's like, boom, right over here. And one of the books I do recommend for anyone that really likes stars is something done by the guy that did Curious George. He actually wrote something
Oh,
called
really?
The Stars.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, let me see. I've got it right here. So this right here,
Oh,
and
cool.
what he did, not that you can see it, is he redrew the constellations with the same stars. But when he redrew them, they actually look like what they're supposed to represent. So
Hmm.
I forgot is it Cestus, the whale? When he draws it out, it actually looks like a whale. But if you go by the traditional method, that I say traditional, the way that they do it a lot of times in most books, they look nothing um, like what they're supposed to represent. And he
Right.
redrew them, same stars, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that does look like a whale. Oh, this does
Mhm.
look like a person. Oh, this, and Dave Matheson's hypothesis, and I'll use the word hypothesis in this case. His point is, if you can even look at the ancient artwork, you will find that the artwork in many things, in poses and everything else, actually is very similar to the constellations in the sky.
Yes.
So when you start looking at and he was showing over whether it was India or a lot of these places, they're the same. They'll be in the same pose like this, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. And apparently that applies. Not that I've gotten into Freemasonry. That's my friend who's a Freemason, but he talks about, oh yeah, there's a lot of symbolism in all of this, and a lot of people just don't realize it. He says once you start
Right.
getting into Freemasonry, all of a sudden you start understanding all the symbolism around. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
anyway, I don't mean this as a negative thing. It's a way to communicate information in
Mhm.
a non-verbal form very quickly.
They,
And
they think they've
the
been
other,
able to date the Sphinx by
yeah,
retro using computers going back to when the Sphinx was built. That it was Leo, the constellation of Leo, was what was on the horizon with the rising sun.
exactly.
And,
And he actually matches the east-west, and it looks a lot better. And you go, well, okay, this is probably true.
mhm.
Again, people can argue what's there and what isn't, but what you can't say is, I think the celestial stars meant a lot more to our ancestors, and anyone who's actually been away from skylights as much as possible. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, you're like, you're just like, wow, I didn't realize there were so many stars in the sky and just how bright they are.
Oh
But
yeah, I was when I moved out to Phoenix, Arizona. Um, oh my God, I thought I had seen the night sky fairly well just going out in the cornfields of Indiana, but when you get out in Arizona and there's no traffic lights, you really see the sky. And I was blown away every time that we would be out at night driving. We lived just north of Phoenix, and all the roads have are just a little reflectors in the middle of the road, no street lights, no nothing, and no billboards. So you really got to get a taste of it. I saw a shooting star every time. I would see 2 or 3 of them a night if we sat out there, and it was just amazing. It was just amazing. Uh, yeah, it's beautiful. It's just, it's awestruck.
The only issue is that humans are eating other animals is just a natural part
I love
of the food chain
sound.
and
I can hear you.
biologically designed to be omnivores. And there's also a
Okay, I
lot
hear somebody
Mm.
talking, but I can't understand what they're saying.
I think it's Junior.
Yeah, I can hear my son talking.
Oh, I thought somebody was. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Right.
Don't worry, Raven. It's all in your imagination.
Okay, I won't worry then.
unless the other situations like we do progress.
Sorry, I while I was doing what I had to do, I thought of something. I had to look something up in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Yeah, I hoard miniatures too, Cal. I'm trying to curb that because I've got a Kickstarter coming in. We both do, don't we, Cal? Real
So do
soon.
I.
Oh yeah, that's right. You backed it too.
I actually backed for that and the previous one, so I'm getting over 300 miniatures.
Oh, dude. I hope you enjoy the what was it, Duselair Kickstarter. Uh, I I was underwhelmed with the core set minis from it. The stretch goals, things like this dragon turtle and the airship. I really didn't like, but this dragon turtle was freaking phenomenal. I actually sent my extra one to Grim to help him cheer up, and it was a Christmas present. I ordered it, the extra specifically for him. But the caves, that demon, oh my goodness, the thing is what, like 18 inches tall.
Oh yeah, it's going to make a perfect corn demon
Sure,
proxy. I mean, yes,
definitely
I'll
a
use it for other
centerpiece.
things, but I don't usually use demons too much in my role play. So
Really, I look forward to when I can throw those kinds of things. See, it's funny
you're
that
also forgetting. I'm used to palladium demons, where at low level, doesn't matter how weak the demon is, you're just going to kill the party.
as it should be. Um,
So
TSR
I'm not
demons.
accustomed to using a bunch of demons, at least not till high level.
The party I'm running right now, you guys are what, like eight? Oh, some of you are almost ninth level, which um, it's time to break out. Some of the nastier creatures in my my repertoire. I just picked this up. You see this right here?
Which one is that?
It's called Palace of the Vampire Queen.
Okay.
You ever heard of it?
No.
We lost Raven. Come on back. Uh, this is literally, and according to all the history I've been able to track down, this is the original, the absolute very first adventure module for the hobby,
Okay.
made by We Warriors back in '76, and it's for like what does it say? Levels 1 to 5. Designed for use with the original edition rules set. This kit represents a ready-to-use adventure for those of strong heart, steel strength. Possession of a wooden cross couldn't hurt either. Um, so it's levels 1 to 5. But in it, literally, I kid you not, one of the monsters, it says Balrog.
Well, but
A
not
fifth
every
level
month.
party going up against a Balrog. Okay, what? You've got like 50 characters in the party.
Yeah, well, my I would have a one of my favorite responses from a video game. Well, that's disturbing. Run!
Well, but I mean,
Yeah.
not all monsters are meant to be fought. I think people forget about that. There's a lot of monsters that are intended to be um, plot devices, or there's a time to run. And if
Yeah,
players can
yeah.
get up,
If you
yeah.
come at me telling me you killed a Tarask, um, yeah,
You mean
just
the most boring
I have two
monster in
questions.
Monster Manual 2?
Yeah, I have
I
two
hate the
questions. If someone
Trask.
said they killed a Tarask, all right, how many men did you use, or how badly were you fudging the dice?
Well, the Trask is an easy monster to kill if you really look at it. If you have the right equipment, there's not much it can do. Um, but it's a boring monster. It's not a fun monster to run or
Well,
fight. It's a plot device.
The Tarask actually is a very interesting monster. No, what I mean is,
Very
and I'm pretty sure
interesting
all of you have seen the joke
monster.
by now, but I love it because it is more than a joke. Joke if you really think about it. Nothing grows spikes on its back unless it gets stepped on. What the fuck is stepping on a Tarask?
As a dungeon master, as a
that's what
I,
steps.
but well, you say that, then you got Dimetrodons and stuff. But no, at the end of the day, the Trask, it doesn't have ranged weapons. It's not that interesting of a monster. It doesn't. To me, it's more of a plot device that I have to go save X town or whatever.
Sure.
But honestly, if you look at players, they don't really remember the Trask. They just remember it's tough. But everyone remembers Strahd. We're not talking about the Ultra 19th level Strahd that they put in second edition.
Yeah,
You know,
module L Strahd, I think it was.
Yeah, well, right, and you know, people remember. Oddly enough, people tend to remember the monsters they fight at lower levels rather than the higher levels. Oh, it's just the monster of the week that's the big baddie. It's almost like superheroes, you
Mhm.
know. And again, I'm not a superhero fan for certain things, but it's like, look, you a perfect example is like 24. Well, we have to outdo the last one, and in
Yeah.
some cases, that's not the more fun aspect. The more fun aspect is we go through it. So that's why I was joking with Shadow. I said, if my character hits a certain level, well, guess what? He's going to retire. And it's not because he has to retire. He's going to retire because I'm going to find him boring, because there's not going to be the real challenges out there. It's like, okay, now it just feels more contrived. Um, Whereas really the character at that point should be more of a plot device. My own PC should be more of a plot device than anything else. And I think that people sometimes forget about that. And players are intended to be. Uh-oh.
Sorry, it's my paint shaker.
Oh, okay. But at the end of the day, it's like, look, what did the players do to kill Lolth, which was 14th level module, with her
Yeah.
-10 armor class, which now I've been looking at. If you play it correctly, you need like a natural 20 to hit her. Um, where unless you're a fighter, but basically every other class had to be a natural 20. And she did. How many hit points did she have? 66. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, guess what? You stopped the giant invasion from G1, G2, and G3.
Yep.
You disrupted the whole Drow structure in
Oh,
D1, 2, and 3. And
Yep.
then you went into Q1 to literally kill their god. And you're like, okay, and all that was supposed to be done by 14th or 15th level? Okay. And if you actually look at the module, there were sections that says it just leaves like, oh, this town, what is this dwarven stronghold is being attacked. Players can go there, have a whole adventure for like years, and then come back to open the door back up to try to get back into Lolth's
Demon
weird.
Web Pit.
Yeah. The idea was nice. But that was kind of what the players were expected to do. The same thing if you look at it, when I see level 1 through 10, I thought, oh, that's the levels that the players are supposed to be. No, that's the level of the dungeon. The idea was, okay, at level 1, these are the monsters you meet in the dungeon. As you go deeper and deeper in the dungeon, you fight bigger and bigger monsters.
Yeah.
That said, I usually didn't have that. I used to just use the outdoors, and they'd wander around and they go find monsters that way, and then they go hear about a dragon, they go fight that. But yeah, I mean, characters are supposed to be earth shattering by the time they hit 7th through 12th level. They're just supposed to, and I don't think a lot of people remember that. It's what's the 7th level fighter? It's what, a superhero?
Yep.
And I've had friends that say, well, I don't like it because he jumps down off of this. I'm like, yeah, a superhero would do that. That's what the fire's supposed to do. Well, he jumps down 60 feet. Yeah, he's supposed to have the hit points to survive a 60-foot fall.
Yep.
And get up and fight. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. The people forget that Gygax and Arneson and the people in the early days, they read comic books too. And uh, it was all part of fantasy literature at the time. So if they were starting to model their D&D characters, kind of like superheroes, what do you expect? I mean, what else was there to describe, other than, Conan and Fafhrd and Greymouser and Elric and some of the big names? What else was there to model your characters after? Aragorn, even though he was, a double-digit ranger at the end of the story, maybe even partially through it, he didn't do anything super heroic in the way of, defying the laws of physics with his prowess.
well, you know what? It's Aragorn. Everyone wants to put him at high level. Aragorn could have been a 3rd through 5th level ranger. If you actually look at what's going on, you don't need. Everyone looks at the levels and forgets that really, if Gandalf is only the equivalent of a 6th level magic user, and Aragorn is maybe a 4th or 5th level ranger, that's still plenty tough. That's
Well,
still
I don't agree with that with Gandalf. I don't think an angel is a mere seventh level character. You know what I mean?
well.
Just
I
because he didn't do anything spectacular in the way of what we would consider spectacular doesn't mean he wasn't spectacular. And I'm
well,
a
no, 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 no,
huge.
no, no.
Technically, if he's an angel and then she should be above levels.
Well,
I
well,
think
well,
I think
well.
he's
You
also
still
been lore wise. He's limited. He's been limited by his by Monway by his task. He's self imposed. I'm not sure if it's self imposed or imposed by the other Valar, but he is limited into he can't really display his full power. He
Well,
might
I'm
do
going to bring
some.
up.
That makes sense.
I'm going to bring up a little bit different. Is it just means that he comes back? You don't have to have high levels to do earth-shattering things. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's the point of. If I think all too often we get into arguments about levels and go, no, if you play smart, you can get other things in there. This comes back to the henchmen. How many henchmen are you allowed to have with a high charisma? And where was Gandalf's? Gandalf did cast a few spells. Gandalf's real power was in a lot of his knowledge and his ability to get people together.
Yep.
Players can do that just fine. And Gandalf did die. I mean, okay. I think, and again, I'll use a BX. It's just like when people talk about dragons. In BX, a dragon is 32 hit points. You're like, oh, wait a minute. For a 5th level party, 32 hit points, odds are that is a party wipe. For a dragon. And it's like, oh, okay. That's that. And I think that combat was intended to have low hit points, so it tended to be shorter, but it tended to be much more visceral. If you're fighting for 20 rounds, are you really getting any more excitement out of it than if you're doing it for 5 rounds, but every round is much more, nail biting? I think that's part of the aspect. But Gandalf being 6th level, I don't understand why anyone gets mad. Guess what? At 6th level, if you suddenly see a horde of orcs, you're running. It's like, okay, that makes sense. But as a ranger, you still cut through, or any fighter class, you still cut through, what is it? Not orcs, but goblins and stuff like that with less than 1 hit point. You're going through 4 or 5 around.
You mean less one hit die?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's still pretty good. I mean, yeah, but it still makes, if you fight that orc chieftain with, 6 hit dice, that's still a real threat.
Yep.
So
And the
that's
power
what I'm
level
saying.
is kind
Sometimes
of-
I think there's too much inflation, and people look at the most powerful things rather than saying, "What can I do at the lower levels?" You can do a lot if you're smart.
Yeah. I think also like Lord of the Rings is it's I wouldn't say the low it's not really a low magic. It has a very different attitude towards magic.
Yeah.
It's sort of in the bones of the world. It's sort of in kind of healing and sort of very intangible stuff. Very rarely does it happen have to be showy. And I think it's also kind of again like a power level. Like it's a very low power level setting. I mean the what's his name? Sauron was, basically had his not, it wasn't like the movie where it's like it's an accidental like, oh, I'm defending myself and he cuts the fingers off. It was like we've defeated him, we've got him, by the neck, and we cut the, he cut the ring off of Sauron's finger. A human, like a very powerful human, but it was a human.
Yeah.
Like
The,
If you don't,
the reason I go with the level for Aragorn, I do, is because I know that Gygax and Arneson, whoever wrote up the Ranger, when they put in the thing in AD&D, a ninth level Ranger can start using magic user magic items that pertain to clairaudience, clairvoyance, ESP, and telepathy, which would include what? The crystal ball, which was in Tolkien, the Palantir. So
right.
in order for him to use the Palantir, he had to be ninth level in AD&D. And I'm like, not a problem. I'm totally cool with that. Ninth level Ranger, uh, other than being a badass fighter and a good tracker, doesn't have a whole lot else going for it. Regular ninth level fighter, sure, they will mow through goblins and kobolds like, literally like a lawnmower. But other than that, and they can take a lot of punishment. Cool. But part of the punishment, which I find to this day very perplexing, the description of hit points includes this word that to date there is no equivalent damage for luck. Hit points were supposed to partially be your luck. Okay,
Yeah.
so you may, like, the DM will say, like, okay, you took 23 points of damage, but how much of that was just luck damage?
Well, how much of it is just exhaustion? That's the other
Same
part.
thing.
Yeah.
Same thing.
And people forget. They're like, well, go heal. You know what? If I was working out yesterday, guess what? I'm really sore. So guess what that'd be the equivalent of? Well, I lose some hit points.
Yep. Yep.
Not everything is, and like you said to me, for that luck is, I think the problem really comes down to is that people were looking at hit points as health, and it does more than that. You're really,
Exactly.
it's not until like your last 8 hit points or so that you're really getting a lot of wounds.
Exactly. So especially when you consider the like in AD&D, the town blacksmith, prior to there being a blacksmith character class or NPC class, would have 2 to 7 hit points, and he's the toughest, studliest guy in the town or village. He's only got 2 to 7 hit points.
And some of that,
Luck.
well, and some of that is, and I want to call it, we call it luck. There's also what I want to call fate. Guess what?
Right.
The gods have not smiled upon you.
Yeah, you're a blacksmith. You got a
you're
shit
not
job,
favored.
and everybody knows it.
Well, no, you're not favored. You're not intended to be lifted up to have heroic deaths or victories. You
Right.
were, and I think that's part of what people do forget about, for that very reason. And people forget even a 5th level wizard, with the exception of armor, really can stand almost toe to toe with a 1st level fighter or even a 2nd level fighter.
Mhm.
And people forget about that. It's like, okay, I pull up my dagger. Well, by the time that you hit, 6th level or so, you have enough hit points to be the equivalent of a 2nd level fighter, and you hit like a 2nd level fighter. So it's like, oh, that's not as bad. It's just, I think that the game as a whole has really done some disadvantages, because whenever we read Conan, and this comes down to it too, and I don't know if any of you've watched Fire and Ice, the movie,
Yep.
when the character jumps off the cliff and his fall's broken as he's falling to the ground, that's to represent, oh, guess what? You have more hit points. Not that you're super, not that you're physically tougher. You're just luckier than most of the other people, and you still get hurt. It's this is why I kind of, and again, I like Adventure Conquer King system for this very reason, which is, guess what? Your hit points are your hit points. Once you fall below 0 hit points, then you start rolling on the mortality chart, and that determines what will happen to your character. Usually it's like, you can get knocked out or something like that, but you can lose your hand and eye and stuff like that. And D&D sort of has that. I guess it's if you get down to 0 to 3 hit points or something.
Yeah.
It just, I wish that they, and again, this is where, 40 years of excitement gets a little bit different. It's like, okay, so and so goes down. Are they dead or not? It's that Frodo. He gets stabbed by the troll or whatever. It's like, oh, he should be dead. Well, you don't know until you suddenly look over and like, well, how badly is it? Oh, there's a lot of blood. But anyone that's ever been cut on their forehead knows how much blood comes out, and how much a
Oh yeah,
teaspoon.
who was that famous actor back in the like 50s or 60s? He got drunk after at a party or something, and he went home and somehow he cut his forehead, and he literally bled to death, not realize in his sleep,
Yeah.
because he got cut in the forehead and didn't think it didn't take proper care of it. Didn't think, oh, it's just a little cut, and he freaking bled to death, and it was kind of like a big deal. He was a big
Yeah.
time famous movie star, and tragically died because he
Well,
got a little cut on the forehead.
well, what it meant is just like they used to do with the on the wrestling, where they'd slash their forehead, so it looks like it's far bloodier than it really is. It doesn't take more than like I said, it doesn't take more than a teaspoonful or so of blood to look really bad.
Yeah, I know, right?
And that's sometimes what but you see your friend go down, you see blood coming off, you're like, oh my God. And he gets up and he's like, oh, because I remember as a kid, I used to have bloody noses. Man, it looked like, someone had shot me or something if I wasn't careful.
Yeah. Jackie had, I got called to his school once when he was younger for a bloody nose. He was getting them like pretty regularly almost. And, and I went to go pick him up. Okay, George. I had to go pick him up and bring him home, and I started getting dizzy watching him because not only was he bleeding like really bad, but it was like starting to congeal and get all gross and shit.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I gotta go sit down, and the nurses were laughing at me. It's like, that's my boy. Shut up.
Here's the funny part. If all of a sudden, let's say that he was tired and you walked in and you saw all that blood and stuff, you're like, someone killed my boy. It's like, no, he's just taking a nap. But this is why I like X, is you don't know what it is until you go investigate the character to see what's going on. Now, and the other part I do like about it is that your rolls are determined by your hit dice. So if you have a high hit die, you're less, you're less likely to get the major wounds than if you don't. But I also like the fact I don't have to roll for every attack. I roll when you go down. So, and the longer it takes, the worse it can be. It's just, I think sometimes people forget about that. The other part is, not that it's used enough, but you know how players never want to surrender. Well, guess what? At a certain point, if they don't have to do necessarily lethal damage. If you want to capture the characters, you just let them fight until they hit 0 hit points, and now you're captured.
Yep.
Which there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes I think people forget about that.
What's wrong is the way that they react when you take away their stuff, even though everybody knows their stuff is locked away in a room. They just got to go get it, but they act like it's I've literally seen people, I'd rather be dead. Say, just kill me then. You're taking away my stuff, just kill me. I'm like, okay, as you wish. Eject button been pushed.
Well, but the other part is,
you want succubuses, huh, Cal? I can oblige you.
But I mean, how disposable are your items? And what I mean by that is, and this is where we're talking about, losing certain magic items and stuff. If you make it so magic items can be destroyed or lost, and there's a wettable replacement for them, players are not as worried about it. It's how do I want to put this? It's like when you get your javelin for your, Twilight 2000 character. I don't want to have to use it, but the expectation is you use it, it's done. Same way where, like Craft Gamer saying, like, he hoards his scrolls. Yeah, I hoard my scrolls too if I don't know the spell. But like those protection from whatever scrolls or fire resistance, those are meant to be used. If there are enough scrolls in the game and you keep them refreshed. Same thing with like healing potions. If there are enough in the game that the players are going through them, one is it helps drain their money, but the other part is they don't mind using them because they know that they'll get some back. And then if they know that they could lose their +5 sword, then guess what? They're going to hold that back until certain times.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but
it's usually that, and you know,
no.
I don't hand out potions of healing very often because that becomes a video game. I've been in so many games where people would literally, all right, I'm going into town, I'm buying 10x heals. I'm like, what? You
Well,
know,
the other
then it just becomes a resource management game. You're supposed to, you're supposed to need those clerics for just those reasons, as among other reasons, because
but
that's it. I mean, that's the only thing you can count on when it comes to healing is the cleric. You can
well
count on that, like, the sun coming up the next day. Uh, Rely on that because you
well
may be in a dungeon or a forest or an environment where it's just not going to
Well,
happen.
Shadow, what you actually do is what Bruce has done, and he's done it quite well. Trick the players into thinking they need healing potions when the cleric is just fine.
I'm going to be a little different.
We have wasted money on healing potions, but because of the way Bruce challenges us, we never know when we're going to need them.
I'm going to be different than that. Your cleric shouldn't be learning healing spells. Oh no, I don't mean when they go down, maybe one or two in that set. The problem I found too often is they always use them, and I'm like, there are so many other cool spells for clerics. And Shadow did this when we were playing the game. He was taking the healing. I'm like, no, I'll do protection from evil. No, I'll do this one.
Mhm.
Bless. Again, we're doing the BX system in this case.
Mhm.
You're like, well, wow. You mean with the bless, I get the +1 to hit, +1 to this. Well, like chant.
Sure.
The they're a force multiplier, and the other part is if I start bringing healing potions, it just encourages the fighters to get into fucking fights, and I'm tired of that. Where I know it sounds
What's up,
funny,
murder hobo?
but
Well, it's like this. Owen. When the party started, there
yeah,
were 3 clerics, right?
yeah.
That meant that not only could I throw tougher monsters at you than goblins and kobolds, which if you notice, you guys haven't run into a goblin, kobold, or an orc yet, and you're about to hit 9th level. Okay, if you have the right allotment of clerics per group, let's say 3 for every 10 characters, then each cleric can have at least one heal spell at first level and 1 or 2, depending on their wisdom bonus, other utility spells, so that not you're not walking in with 9 cure light wound spells, which would be one way to go, but you can actually have other spells as well. But when you've got one cleric, um
I think you're missing my point. Is if I'm a cleric and I'm taking heal spells, I'm encouraging the party to get into fights. And what
well, you might be encouraging that, but me as a GM, it's going to happen anyways, whether it's encouraged or not. You know what I
now
mean? There's got to
my
be
view on
some
this, and again, it depends on where you're going, especially in first edition. The XP is not in the combat; it's in the treasure. So you want to avoid as many fights as possible.
or avoiding the monsters, certainly.
Okay. And that's what
But
I mean. Is if they know they don't have that backup for the automatic healing, they'll think twice about fights. Number one. Number two is when they do decide to fight, guess what they're going to do? They're going to put that thumb on the scale as far as they can because of that.
well,
It's the same.
here's the thing. Let's go with a 10 man party, 3
Sure.
clerics. Even if you have 9 cure light wounds, right? And you come across a group of, let's say, 15 or 20 orcs, kobolds, gnolls, whatever, 1 hit die monsters. Everybody's going to get hit at least once. And you just walked into the 3rd room of said dungeon, and you blasted off all your cure light wound spells.
I'm going to bring a little bit different though. Guess what? You shouldn't be, if you're going to be fighting, you should be trying to use surprise as much as possible. You
Mhm.
should be using your scouting. What I'm trying to say is it encourages a certain type of play if you're going to be taking those kinds of spells. If you take a different set of spells, and then all of a sudden it has a lot of difference. And then again, this comes back to our story of henchmen. Guess what? Now your henchmen are acting as meat shields. And when I say a meat shield is, I can increase my armor class by 2 or 3. But if I have 3 henchmen, guess
You
what?
increase your
I
armor
have,
class to -10 because you're not getting hit. Well, the thing is though, uh, if 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 you take no healing spells,
yeah,
you're all going to die.
no,
That's guaranteed.
no. That's I have it completely. No, I don't view it that way. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Guess what? Well, I'm not going to take healing. I'll heal you when we're back in town, but I'm not healing you out in the middle of nowhere. And what does that
I
do?
will kill that party.
No,
It's just
well,
because of the propensity for your average first level. Let's just go with like keep on the Borderlands or even B1 Expedition to the Unknown. You know, you go into like an actual first level dungeon, and there's going to be, you know, scores and scores of monsters that you're just not going to be able to sneak and hide from, and you know, more or less, you know, breeze through those encounters.
I
It's
didn't
just
say
not.
you breeze through. You're not supposed to breeze through those encounters. What I'm saying is, guess what? Now you're going to start sneaking. Guess what? Your thieves are going to actually do their scouting aspect.
Mhm.
Now, when you come over to a door, now hear noise becomes important. Guess what we're all going to do? We're going to get out there. Do you hear noise? Okay, now we're going to break down the door. I mean, you get it changes your tactics entirely. Number one. Number two is if you're first level, generally a cure light wounds. By the time you're casting that, it's not that hard. And again, I'm going to go by BX more than the AD&D. But by the BX, it's very easy to get an armor class of 4. Armor class of 4 is pretty easy for your frontline group. If you got a couple of henchmen or hirelings, I'm going to just say hirelings in this case, you've spread it out. If everyone does a good tactic, combat's only going to last 2 rounds. So you're not even casting your cure light wounds if you declare before your action, which I know we haven't been doing. But if I say, okay, it's initiative, tell me what your action is first, then we'll roll initiative. Now all of a sudden the cleric's a frontline fighter in those cases. What does that mean? The frontline fighter is not going to be casting spells, not initially, and that's what I'm referring to though. Yeah, you can say, well, a murder hobo or rocks. Yeah, if you have high stats, but this is why sometimes, weirdly enough, players with characters with lower stats tend to live longer than players with high stats, because the players with high stats get this really swingy pluses and minuses and take on things far beyond what they would be expected to. Whereas the other players, like, look, you know,
You can see that.
you know, that's what I'm referring to. It changes the play style. It's again, if you want to go in there and you want to roll in with a
Stabby, everything. Yeah.
yeah. Then yeah, your cleric is going to be expected to be the heal bot. I need you for that. But if you're going to go in and say, okay, my cleric is going to have, well, we'll say the cleric will have 6 to 8 hit points. The fighter will have 8 to 10. The magic user has, 3 to 4, and your thief has probably 4 to 6. At that point, guess what? Almost your fighter might take 2 hits. Your cleric might take 1 or 2 hits. Everyone else usually takes 1 hit, and unless they're really lucky, it changes the way
My experience has been different.
Sure.
As soon as the party, literally, I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. As soon as the party is at half hit points, they leave.
Yeah, but how do you? Okay, well, and that's fine in a dungeon. That's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to go into a dungeon multiple times. It's not supposed to be one time. But what is half hit points in when you're first level? Half hit points is near
It's like
death.
3 or 4.
Yeah, I mean, guess what? 2 hits, you're down. I mean, if the average monster is doing, a D6,
Yep.
and your hit points are around, even with an 8, you might take 3 hits. Your cleric takes 2. Your armor becomes very. At that point, you're starting to say, guess what, cleric? I want you to have that protection from evil. Guess what? I want you to have this. I want you to change my odds a lot. And again, the monsters don't hit that often at low levels, depending on what you're fighting. Now, if you're fighting an ogre, it's a lot tougher. But ogres suddenly become really scary. It's like there's an ogre
Well,
effect.
I think for me, it's about numbers. I've seen that if the party's coming up against a group of, let's just say, 10 kobolds
Yeah,
or orcs or goblins, just let's go with the half hit die monsters, and I'm rolling 10 d20s.
but
I'm literally going to probably hit half the time.
well, at most you're going to hit 2 or 3 times. If you look at statistically, if you're going to look at it about an arm class of 5, which is not unreasonable. But here's the point: your party shouldn't be attacked by 10 times. There should only be like 3 that can get in the front row.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at that point, they may be using ranged weapons. Well, okay, that's fine, but then the party starts doing stuff like, let me start throwing oil, let me start doing this, let me start going around the corner. How do I start, peeling them off? Again, it's a different style of play, but it's much more of a, well, how do I do this? And that's what I'm referring to in certain cases. Guess what? Your cleric and your fighters front line. They got heavy armor. The cleric's going to have as good of an armor class as your fighter on average. He's just not going to do quite as much damage. Well, he doesn't have to. My mace does a D6. Okay, the monsters have on average, 3 to 4 hit points. Okay, that means the cleric can generally kill about 1 around. The fighter will kill 1 around. It's like, okay, that sounds cool. And that's not a huge deal, I think, in most cases. But it does change your tactics for this. We're not going to just jump into the room and say, hey, we're going to fight 15 or 20 of them. You might go, okay, what are we going to do? Hey, how about we get them over here, and then we're going to get them this crossfire where now they can't get the full abilities. Oh, we're going to do this. It changes the whole dynamic. And that's where, and this is what does frustrate me in certain cases if you actually look at AD&D. Technically, the elves and the halflings automatically get hide and shadows. Automatically.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas your thief doesn't. Your hide and shadows like 15%. Why do they have hear noise? Well, hear noise, if you actually read it, it's only supposed to use against doors to tell if there's something alive on the other side.
Yeah.
But why is strength so important for opening the door? Because you can burst in the door and surprise the opponents. And in first edition AD&D, if you actually read it, if you surprise your opponents, they get 1 attack per segment. And so you can take out, before they even react, you can take out like half of your opponents if they're surprised. So it really favors that aspect. So guess what now starts coming down to? Hey, let's get a silence spell. Hey, let's do the darkness spell. Let's start doing other stuff. And those suddenly become much more powerful than the heal, because the heal only affects 1, whereas I can do a force multiplier by doing a silence. Now they can't hear us on the other side of the door. Or something of that sort. Now your thief starts ranging ahead. He starts acting as a scout. And that's where, again, the halflings and the elves do much better than the thief, oddly enough. And so that's what I'm referring to. And in certain cases, it also encourages players to talk to the monsters. Every player seems
I've
to
never
have...
seen that. I haven't seen that since literally, I can't remember a time that the party, any party I've ever been in or dungeon mastering for, it's like that. I never see that happen. Like, never.
Well, but part of it comes down to, if you're a hobgoblin, let's look at the other side too. Your opponents, do they want to die? Are they going to fight to the bitter end? The answer is probably not. This is where I really do like BX, is they had that morale score. So it lets you know, like, certain monsters will almost fight to the death, and other monsters will turn and tail and run. And you're like, oh, okay, the turning, the tailing, and running, that's to me more effective than anything else. I don't have to kill all 10 hobgoblins or kobolds. If I can take out 2 of them and they suddenly run, cool, I'm done. I did my job. And I think that's one thing that a lot of players, DMs and players forget. And again, that's why I think BX did a better job than AD&D. AD&D, you want to roll the percentile dice. You had a big chart for stuff. It gets fairly convoluted. You get the big morale. BX had it like, well, here's your roll. This is when you roll. Okay, cool. But it made a big difference when you look at the morale. Some monsters only had a morale of 4. Other monsters had a morale of 11. And you're like, well, if I'm rolling a 2d6, that really changed the whole thing. But why in the world do they all have, if you look at most of demi-humans, why do they almost always speak their enemy's language? Odds are they're talking to each other. Or, hey, let's go listen. And if you're really smart, if you get like disguise self and you get a few other things, you can get what was that scene in Lord of the Rings where they all decide to fight over the treasure, and then they almost kill each other in the big tower.
Sir Thungle.
Yeah. Uh, if you can get that, guess what? Your players have won without ever throwing, Sam only had to fight, what, one goblin? It's like, okay.
And the goblin thought he was an elf.
Yeah. So, I mean, you don't have to fight all 50 of them if you can get them to fight amongst themselves. And that's where chaotic, that's where some of the alignments come into it, is now you want to go, they don't trust each other. That's, how come good can fight against all the others? Well, because they can get them to do a lot of infighting. That's part of the idea for it. I'm not saying you don't carry one spell, but when you only, look at the cleric for BX. When do they get their first spell? It's second level. They don't get multiple spells.
Yeah, see that? I hated that too.
Well, you may hate it, but if you actually look at it, is they're intended to be fighters that, by the time a cleric is probably the most kick-ass character class that everyone seems to ignore. They get all the bonuses almost. They fight really well.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of them, but for me, healing is more important than all the other stuff. Healing says I'm not dead yet.
You know
Here.
what for clerics are their most important ability is turn undead. That's that.
If you're in a campaign with undead.
Well, if you're going underground, you're going to meet undead at some point. But look, they can hold
You
their
should.
own.
Absolutely should. They're
Well,
one of the best fantasy tropes of all time.
It has, but I don't like fighting undead all the time.
Oh
But
no.
But the other part is again is protection from evil. Man, that's a really powerful spell.
Sure.
You get blessed. That's a very powerful spell. You can start really, pushing things out, and this is why, AD&D gives you more spells, but a lot of times the durations are more limited. But like I said, I've been playing with the Ye Olde Geek. Guess what we do? We all pile in there. We all talk about stuff before we try getting into a fight. We don't. And our cleric, who by the way is the biggest badass because he has the highest constitution.
Mhm.
So he's what, 5th level, and he has like 35 hit points. And this is on someone that has a D6 hit points. He takes. We all stand behind him. It's like, here, you go in front. Here, you do this. And what does he do? Well, guess what? I'll cast this spell, or I'll cast this spell. But if you're a frontline fighter, if you're hit, you lose your spell. So really, healing is after the combat, not during the combat, unless you have enough fighters. Which again, if you get enough henchmen, you're okay with that. But this is where it's a different play style, and you start looking at it like, well, how should we? And when your hit points are lower and you have less spells, you tend to look at fights as more of a negative than as a positive, because I don't get a lot of experience or stuff like that for killing the goblins. I mean, what is it? It's like 5 or 10 experience points.
Mhm.
But what I do get is when I find the treasure chest. Okay, what am I trying to do? I'd rather get the treasure chest and get out. And again, it's a different style of game when you start looking at what was there. Why did Gygax put so much emphasis on it? Now, 2E changed the emphasis for the game a lot. It did.
Yeah, because you didn't get shit for treasure. They literally cut the treasure type table. All the percentages say to find treasure stayed identical, but the number of coins or whatever you want to call it was literally cut in half.
But they increased the amount of experience points you got for killing monsters. So it changed the focus.
Well, they also made the monsters tougher too.
Uh,
Well, maybe not all of them, but enough of the bigger ones. Dragons were like, oh my
Sure.
god, they gave them freaking steroid and spinach. You know what I'm saying?
well, they did, but players were expected to have more stuff. This is why I said is, are you making the game? And this was the problem I found is, you can always add more hit points. Does it make the game any more fun? I'd rather have 5 rounds of nail biting combat than 40 rounds of combat where, and I know that you're in Bruce's game. I'm sorry, an 8-hour battle, I literally did 200 goblins versus 100 other troops, and I didn't use anything special in Axe, Now some of it is, and we, they wiped them out, and we were rolling the entire time. Now some of it is I would roll 20 dice at a time, like which group shoots it here.
Uh-huh.
But it's like, okay, but guess what? Your third level fighter is pretty badass, effectively, because he can take a couple of rounds. But his henchmen around him, even though they were effectively badasses, they got they were slowly being whittled down. It's like, oh, okay, they only have 5 hit points. Roll. All right, they took 4 here. It adds up over time. But it did keep it somewhat exciting. Now the goblins were easy to kill, but they were on wargs, which were a pain in the ass. It's just, like I said, healing has its place. I'm not against it. I would rather, and this is where I think Axe did a little bit better than the old Vancian style magic, is you have a limited number of spells but you get to pick which ones you cast. And to be fair, when I played AD&D, that's the way I played it. You didn't have to memorize all your spells beforehand because there were certain spells that no one took just because they were niche spells. I know why Gygax may have done it, but it just didn't, like, why would I take knock? Well, there are times that knock's really useful, but am I going to take it all the time? No. It's the same reason that I used to look at wizards. Wizards, you can do 2 types of wizards. And again, I think this is where D&D comes into it, is with a party of 6 to 8 player character, odds are, even if you're just playing with the core, you're going to have 2 of each type. You should have 2 fighters, 2 thieves, 2 clerics. Well, guess what? Now you've got a utility cleric and you've got a healing cleric. You've got a utility wizard, and then you've got a combat wizard. And it allowed them enough room to diversify so they don't feel like they're stepping on each other's feet. And 2 thieves, just because, well,
if one fails, the other one gets a chance.
Exactly.
You don't have to come back to the dungeon a level later, which I thought was a retarded rule. Because I don't know about you. Actually, I do know. I know if I say go get your lock picks, they're probably within 5 feet of you, and you know how to do it. And if you fail the first time, you're not giving up. You'll just sit there and do it until it's open.
Well, and again, this is where I liked Axe. Axe had something which was hasty versus methodical. Hasty was something you could do real quick. It's like, oh, okay, it's the R2-D2 while he's been in combat trying to open the door. Okay, guess what? If you fail, then you can't do that. But if you had methodical, you could keep fighting for every turn. So I was like, oh, okay, you'll get it open eventually. But do you want to stay here waiting for wandering monsters and stuff? That's the other part.
See, for me, it's like, okay, we didn't. The thief couldn't open the lock. Break out the hammer and chisel, or the saw, or the axe. We're getting through that door unless it's made out of solid steel. You know what I mean? There's no door you can't open with other tools if the lock picks don't work. The fact that was never a given. Yeah, sure, we're going to alert everything in the dungeon per se by trying to smash this door down, but we're going to get this door down.
Well, I'm going to say, but for the fighter, as an example, the fighter if they had the exceptional strength, could break locked doors. But the other part is
that's kind of dumb because you don't need exceptional strength. You just need average strength and tenacity. I can get through any door with an axe, a hammer, a chisel, etc. If I spend the freaking time.
Well, but that's what's the other part too is, Gygax was doing West March's style. Well, guess what? That door that's locked, you'll come back to it later. And if you're doing big parties, we kind of have a West March style, but I'm using, like for Ye Olde Geek, we don't know who shows up in any week. You come in at a certain time, and it's like, who's here? That's what we're doing with his. And sometimes we have 4 players, sometimes we have 8. You don't know who's coming in. We pick one of our characters. It's like, well, what do we have? We have this. You know what? We need a thief. Okay, you know what? I'm bringing my thief in. Okay, now, one of the guys always plays a cleric. We're like, yeah, we want Angus. He's like, well, Angus is in the other dungeon. We're like, son of a bitch.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that style just because it makes it too much like what do you call it? Like like there is no camaraderie. It's just a group of placeholders. You know what I mean?
Well, you say no camaraderie, yet we'll go through it, and the
I
main
mean,
character.
not like instantly. It's like in your town, let's say where you live, you've probably
Mhm.
got a good handful of close friends that you can kind of count on, right?
Yeah. Well,
If you literally found a dungeon or something, you're getting your buddies together, you'd call on them. You wouldn't be calling on a bunch of people you barely know.
but you know what?
I wish I could explain it better, but it just seems like
Well, this is why I like to
unrealistic.
look. Well, it's not meant to be realistic. I mean, it's a fantasy game.
No, I mean when it comes to the relationship that the characters have with one another.
Well, no, I understand that part. What I'm trying to say is, in most cases, is okay. I bring up this character. Well, this character's not here. Well, I'm going to bring up this other character, and you can play differently. You can do a lot of other stuff. I don't mind it because guess what? I don't feel it. If I don't play a game for 2 months, I show up. They're like, okay, come join in. Now,
Yeah.
but the other part is I'm also playing with players I know for long enough, and so it's like, well, here's my new first level character. Like, okay, I hope he makes it, and
I lost 5 first level characters in one game one afternoon, and by the second character, I only ran clerics. The only spells I had were cure light wounds, and they still all died.
well, but like I said, for us, we ran it. So my character's cleric is second level. He has 14 hit points because he got a good con. And that's actually pretty good for rolling a d6. But
Mhm.
he does that. His intelligence is that bright. It's like, okay, at one point we got attacked by 24, which you have to realize this is all tongue in cheek anyway. We got attacked by a bunch of Santa elves, and we were fighting like 24 of them. And I thought it was going to be a total party kill. They failed their morale and run for it. My cleric had 1 hit point left. One decides to chase after them. And the whole reason I chased after them is I did not want them to regain their morale because I knew we would not win another fight.
Mhm.
And then the other players went around, and this was the same dungeon. They're trying to chase the elves down too. We're able to cut them down enough that they surrender, even though they outnumber us like 5-1. But you get those heroic moments for that. But
Mhm.
I wouldn't have had that if I had had too much for that. And again, I was first level. I think I got caught on fire, which didn't help.
That never helps. I don't care how cold you are. Getting caught on fire does not help.
Well, they threw a flask of oil and it hit me, and so I was like, oh my god! And I do think that we did have the cure light wounds, but at that point it's like, well, what does the protection from evil do? I did that one time with protection from evil, and you saw this when we were playing that one game. It's like, oh, I'm going to stand in the door because the rules say that as long as I don't attack, they won't attack me back. It's like, okay, guys, use your ranged combat to attack it. And it's like, but.
Mhm.
But that's what it encourages for the tactics. That's what I'm trying to say. Is I like players don't really learn their tactics until they either fight something very strong or where the tactics really matter. Like Murder Hobo saying, "Well, he's going to stab everything." Yeah, do you know how many times that stupid player would get us killed, and then you feel like a dick as an actual player by not helping the guy out? Whereas in reality, what we should be saying is, you go fight him. We're going to sit back here and wait for you to die. And after you roll up your third or fourth character, you're going to learn that you work as a party or you die.
So, yeah, I had 2 really good ways of dealing with murder hobos. I'll admit I was mostly a sparkly troll DM, so I let the players get away with quite a bit. But when we had murder hobos, one of my favorite things to do was introduce a cocained up version of whatever they were murder hoboing, or cursed weapons, because in Palladium they have irresistible cursed weapons. Even if you know the curse before taking it, you cannot help yourself but take a rune weapon.
But I don't have to do that. My point being is that most of the time what you'll find out is the party will do this big elaborate plan, and the murder hobo runs in and decides to start fighting. You know what the best thing to do as a party is either you follow him as one group, we go down as a whole thing. But if he's like first, second level and decides to take on the ogre, and you're like, well, hold on here, let's do a good planning for this.
Mhm.
And he decides to ruin the plan, then you know what you do? You run, and he gets mad because you left him behind. It's like, no, you didn't follow the plan. And if you have a problem with this, go play with a different group.
Yeah, well,
And-
it's different when you don't when you have a whole group of murder hobos.
Well, you know what though? That's you know, I found it funny because Mage's Musings, you know, he talked about that. He said he got his 5e players and they were used to surviving. He said after the third TPK, they went, maybe this isn't the way we should be playing. And that's actually part of what, which I think is really interesting, is if you is I've been noticing that as the players level, the deaths go way down. Like when you first get a group together, you suddenly find out that mortality rates are somewhere between 20 and 50% for each adventure. And then by the time they get to like third or fourth level, it's down to 5 or 10%, if that. And now some of that is hit points, but you also start noticing that the party starts thinking through stuff. They start doing tactics. They're like, okay, what spells can we cast? They aren't rushing in. And so and you'll find out the party can take out something much larger than you think that they should. And it's because they decided to get their tactics together rather than just being, hey, we're going to go in there. This is why I don't like really high stats a lot of times. I say this as a person who always seems to get high stats. Is it makes the game a lot more swingy. You know, if you get a fighter with a strength of 15, which is actually a pretty decent, he gets +1 to damage. He's not going to be trying taking out that ogre. His odds are he knows he can't take out the ogre fast enough before the ogre starts crushing the party. But if you get the 18-0 character, you know, at first, second level, he says, you know what? I have a chance of taking this character out. Let's do it. But he doesn't have the hit points to do so. So it becomes very swingy. Either you win or it becomes a complete bloodbath. And the same thing when we're going to start talking about, and though I would change the rules a bit, I do like what the rules cyclopedia did with weapons, where you start becoming the regular, then you become a master, but you don't get the specialization at first level. You get it at later levels. And then you get the, boy, those damages can add up pretty fast when you start looking at it. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't mind the unearthed arcana weapon specialization at first level. There's already enough front loading with elves and dwarves. They get all the special bells and whistles at first level. I don't need to force them into taking time to look for a master and getting the special training and stuff like that. There's too many characters in too much literature and whatnot that already on the first page they're pretty badass. I got no problem with that.
But and this is the way I look at it. Your first 3 levels are really training levels. It's learning to play the game. It's learning to play your character. And I don't mind specialization at higher levels. I do mind it more at first level because it starts making a lot of stuff more trivial because it's not that hard to kill off a goblin in the first one. So you don't need, but you're getting all these.
That's why there were literally none in this campaign that I'm running, because it's kind of boring to me. I mean, I've been playing this game for 40 some odd years, and me single handedly, I've probably killed 10,000 goblins, kobolds, and orcs, individually. That there's just no there's no thrill or threat to it. And I assume that a lot of my players have been there, done that as well. That's why some of the first things you fought were creatures that nobody ever uses. You know what I mean?
Well, no, I don't disagree with you on some of that. It's just certain things as how do I want to put some of this? If you look at like the languages, and this is one of the reasons I did it. It's always thought long term whenever I was putting my character, and I'm not saying that we'd roll up the 4d6 or the 3d6 6 times for each stat, and we get really high stats, and we'd roll until we got the stats we wanted. But as I get older, I'm beginning to appreciate what D&D is. Some of it by looking back at the way the game was supposed to be played in some of the modules, and you start realizing, like, okay, what's going to go on here? What's going to go on here? And it's not that you don't get, what were the orcs? You got like 4,000 orcs. Well, at that point, that's an invading army. That's a whole nation state.
Mm-hmm.
And, and it's like, okay, what are you doing? You're doing raiding bands. But the other point is, with 2 players, if they actually sit and talk, now as long as they don't have elves, which is where I think that people forget about, orcs don't take elven prisoners. They'll take all the other prisoners, but they won't take elven prisoners. If you can get it and you can roll the reaction charts and stuff like that, you'll start noticing that maybe the orcs don't want to fight you either. And you're like, look, we outnumber you 2-1. You give us your treasure, we'll let you be. And they might do the same thing. Guess what? You give us a certain amount of gold, we'll leave you alone. Not everyone has to fight each other. And sometimes I feel that that's where, like you said, no one wants to talk to your opponent. Yeah, you don't talk to your opponent because you can kill them. If your opponent goes over like, well, guess what? If we fight, we'll take 50% casualties and you'll have 100% casualties. And you look at the other players like, okay, which half of you want to die? And the answer is none of them want to die. So then maybe it's better to talk at this point. That's what I'm referring to. And I think a lot of people forget about that. And you also have to have the DM willing to do that. Hey, what are you doing here? Why are you doing that? But one of the modules I really do like for the idea of it was U2. U1, U2, U3. You find lizard men. Well, everyone's worried about the lizard men going to invade, but why are the lizard men there? The lizard men are there because they got pushed out by the Sahagwin. And if you kill off a bunch of the lizard men, you have less people to help you out with. And
I'm a big fan of Lizardmen. Do you remember that image in the Rogues Gallery of that Lizardman henchman you could get?
I don't remember it.
It was so well drawn. It was so well drawn that I remember when that book came out, and I was paid DM at Bob's Comics in Orange County, which is I just saw an ad for Bob's Comics in Dragon Magazine #7 that we reviewed this morning. Freaking blew my mind. I worked there that's where I got my start. To get a copy of that magazine though is about $200. Thankfully, it's on the web. But the image of the Lizard Man when the Rogues Gallery came out, it was so striking and so awesome. Even the write up of the NPC, I forget what his name was, that within like a week of playing, running games at that shop, I must have bumped into half a dozen people who wanted to come to my table and play and bring that Lizardman henchman that they had paid to be their henchman or hireling or whatever. It was really it was awesome, especially when you take into consideration that Lizardman's alignment in AD&D is actually neutral, which means you don't fuck with them, they won't fuck with you. You make a deal with them, they're going to stick to the deal, unless someone offers them a better one, I guess maybe.
What happened to Omen?
I don't know. He might have got kicked again.
He got abducted by aliens, just like Raven.
It's entirely possible. No, she was having trouble reconnecting and just decided to say adios without saying adios, which is actually what I'm going to do now because I need to do some stuff. It is a school night, and we've had a nice fun conversation. I'll see you tomorrow, crafting. Hopefully, you have a nice evening, and everybody else have a great weekend. I won't be doing anything other than being on Justin's show tomorrow. I've got a game tomorrow night, and it's No Meat Friday, so I gotta actually do some different kind of cooking to make dinner, appetizing and breakfast and all that. I totally spaced on the No Meat Friday thing. I knew it was yesterday was Ash Wednesday, and we're now in Lent, but I totally spaced that, and since we observe that, makes things a little more complicated. But everybody else out there, have yourself a great weekend. Get some gaming in, get some painting in, and I will see you guys. You're not playing this Saturday, are you, Crafting?
No.
Okay, well, we'll try not to do too much fun stuff without you because you are absolutely going to be crucial in one part of the mission, if you will, because
Okay.
you're one of the things your character is, let's say, known for, or at least that you voiced to me is going to come into play. So
Okay.
I think you'll have fun with that. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do it, but it's a thing. So I'll see you
Sounds good.
tomorrow. Everybody else, love you guys.
Yep.
Happy trails.
See ya.